Chapter 12:16. Zillion came back to her senses and played the jade flute once again. Thus, the spiritual beasts that had been frozen in place all began to attack the small tree. The small tree was so angry that its little face turned green. It raised its fleshy arm and stretched its palm towards the sky. With a loud bang, countless vines drilled out from the ground. In an instant, they had bound the legs of the spiritual beasts and hung them in the air. This was not the end. How could hanging them up quell the anger in the small tree's heart? Thus, he once again made the vine stretch out, turning it into a long whip, and ruthlessly lashed the bodies of the spiritual beasts. Silence. The entire world had returned to peace at this moment. Zillion's hand loosened in fright, and the jade flute fell to the ground. Her beautiful face was deathly pale as she stared in horror at the arrogant small tree. Hee. Fire sneered and said with his hands on his hips, "I really don't know where you got the courage to attack the small tree. Since I dared to throw the small tree on the ground, you should have guessed that it is not something you can afford to offend." Zillion bit her lips. Her pale face was filled with despair. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The other party was just a child. How could he defeat so many spiritual beasts in an instant? She did not believe it. She did not believe that anyone in this world would be born with this kind of ability. At this moment, the man in the black robe had already dealt with the people in front of him and appeared in front of her with a murderous aura. Zillion swallowed with difficulty. Her gaze gradually moved up, and when she saw the man's cold mask, cold sweat trickled down from her forehead. Ghost Emperor, boom. The man's power was filled with killing intent and landed heavily on her chest. At this moment, she felt the sound of her dantian shattering, and the spiritual power in her body also flowed out. "You lack men." The man's eyes were cold, and his voice was cold and merciless. "The brothel lacks you. You lack men. The brothel lacks you." This man would never waste a word with insignificant people. In one sentence, he had clearly stated his intentions. "Don't you lack men? There are many men who visit the brothel. That place is very suitable for you." Fear flashed across Zillion's eyes, and she hurriedly crawled up from the ground. She knelt in front of Yun Xiao and said with a pale face, "Ghost Emperor, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I won't dare to join forces with others to deal with you in the future. Please let me go this time. I promise I'll do anything to repay you." At a time like this, how could she still dare to show off? If he wanted to protect himself, he could only desperately apologize.
Bang!
Just as Zillion was about to kneel towards the man waved his sleeve and sent her flying. Violet Lotus spat out a mouthful of blood, her complexion becoming increasingly pale. She regretted it. He regretted dealing with Yun Xiao. This man was not someone they could deal with at all. "Lord Yun Xiao." Fire winked at Yun Xiao. "Leave the people here to me. I guarantee that I will complete the mission with the small tree and not leave a single one of them alive. You and Master can go to the world of two people." She was determined to be a spiritual beast that shared her master's worries. Now that her master and Yun Xiao had not seen each other for so long, they definitely needed to be alone. As for the aftermath, it was enough for her to do it. Yun Xiao walked towards Yun Luofeng. When he saw the small tree giggling at the side, he was unable to shift his gaze away. "He is our son?" Don't blame Yun Xiao for misunderstanding Yun Luofeng. Even though this small tree was only a few months old, he could still see his own shadow on him. Especially his eyebrows, they were extremely similar. Chapter 12:17. So he concluded that Xiaoshu was his and Yun Luofeng's child. Yun Luofeng's expression darkened. "How long have we been apart?" Yun Xiao thought about it. "More than half a year." "How long does pregnancy take?" 10 months, Yun Luofeng smiled. "Then, do you think he's our son?" Yun Xiao was silent for a moment. "Then who is he? What do you think?" Yun Luofeng raised his brows. "He looks so much like you. Then what do you think his identity is?" Hearing this, Yun Xiao immediately became nervous. He stared at Yun Luofeng uneasily. "I have nothing to do with him. All these years, I've been by your side. Apart from you, I've never interacted with anyone else, and my first woman was also you. Feng, you have to believe me. I really have nothing to do with him. Duani Chen was just about to walk towards Yun Luofeng when he heard their conversation. His mouth twitched, and he looked at Yun Xiao speechlessly. The rumored ghost emperor was naturally an idiot? Let's go. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and pulled on Yun Zhao's clothes. I'll settle things with you when we get back. Feng, you really have to believe me. I don't know him. Yun Xiao was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. He was afraid that Yun Luofeng would misunderstand him. Yun Luofeng glanced at him. I adopted Xiao Shu. As for his identity, I'll tell you later. Right now, I want you to settle the score. You faced so many dangers alone. Why didn't you tell me everything? Why didn't you let Qin Yuan tell me? Yun Xiao froze. His black eyes stared at Yun Luofeng. His voice was hoarse and low. I was afraid you'd be worried. So, I want to settle things with you first. Yun Luofeng glared at him.
Fine.
If it can appease your anger, you can punish me however you want. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. A dangerous arc flashed across his eyes. Then let's settle things in bed now. Settle things in bed? Duani Chen was confused. This was the first time he saw someone settle things in bed. Miss Yun was indeed different from ordinary women. Domineering and shameless. From afar, he could vaguely hear the conversation between the two men. I'll go up, you go down. This was an evil voice, incomparably tyrannical. All right. The voice was filled with doting and indulgence. I'll make sure you can't get out of bed for 3 days and 3 nights. Don't worry. With my physique, even if it's 3 months, I can still get out of bed. Duani Chen almost fell to the ground. Miss Yun's domineering attitude was a little too much, right? He actually said that he would make the Ghost Emperor unable to get out of bed for 3 days. However, the Ghost Emperor was very tolerant and indulgent towards her. He could see that the man spoiled her to the bone and allowed her to do whatever she wanted. Duani Chen's heart ached. It was rare for him to fall in love with a woman at first sight. Unfortunately, this woman already had a husband. Her husband was so outstanding that no one could compare to him. Then what hope did he have?
Duani Chen sighed.
Right now, he could only give Yun Luofeng his most sincere blessings. Run. The experts who had come to encircle Yun Xiao turned around and fled when they saw the two of them leave. Fire's sharp eyes glanced at the movements of those people and scolded sternly, if you want to escape, you have to see if you have the ability to do so. Xiao Shu, these people want to kill your parents. How do you plan to punish them? Xiao Shu was not an ordinary human. He had evolved from a tree. Although he had only been born for a few months, his mind was already like that of a child. Chapter 12-18.
Kill.
Hearing Fire's words, Xiao Shu turned his head to look at the people who had turned around and left, and a soft voice came out from his mouth. Yes. Those who bullied their parents deserve to die.
Bang.
Once again, countless vines rose from the ground. Without waiting for those people to escape, the vines had already bound their bodies, preventing them from moving. Xiao Shu beat them to death. Oh, right. Don't beat that woman blowing the flute to death. Your father said that he would sell her to a brothel. Doesn't she like to please men? Then let her do as she wishes. Fire placed his hands on his hips and gave the order. The fat baby raised his small hand, and countless vine whips appeared in front of those people. Then, under their terrified gazes, the whips fiercely lashed out. Pa pa pa. Within the entire mountain peak, only the sound of the whip slicing through the air and the heart-wrenching roars of those people could be heard. Just you wait, there are many people who want to kill the Ghost Emperor. One day, he will die in the hands of a righteous man. Ha ha. The old man from the Boundless sect laughed crazily. His eyes glowed with a blood-red light, and he had already fallen into a state of madness. The more he scolded, the faster the whip struck, until the old man from the Boundless sect was unable to say a single word. Oh, I almost forgot. Fire narrowed his eyes and shot a dangerous gaze towards Duani Chen. You are also in cahoots with them, here to subdue Lord Yun Xiao. Duan Yichen's forehead was drenched in sweat, and he laughed embarrassedly. I'm just here to join in the fun. It has nothing to do with me. You can continue. Fire stroked his chin and slightly raised his head. Seeing that your nature is not bad, I will spare you. But you are not allowed to speak of what happened today. All right, I promise I won't say anything. Duan Yichen hurriedly nodded and swore. No, Fire shook his head. I don't trust you. If you reveal my and the little tree's identity, Master and Lord Yin Xiao will be hunted down by even more people. So take this pill. Duan Yichen was startled. Looking at the pill that Fire handed over to him, he frowned slightly. What is this? This pill will make you forget what happened in the past few days. Forget what happened in the past few days? That also meant he would forget Yin Luofeng? For some reason, when Duan Yichen heard this, his heart throbbed violently. He raised his hand, but he couldn't bring himself to take the pill. I promised not to tell anyone. Is that really not okay? He raised his head, looked at Fire, and said. Fire blinked his eyes. We have not known each other for long. I do not know your identity, nor do I know your character. How can I trust you? Duan Yichen laughed bitterly. He picked up the pill that Fire handed over and gently closed his eyes. Since that was the case, these few days of interaction were just a dream. Now that he had woken up from his dream, he should have forgotten about it. Duan Yichen closed his eyes and swallowed the pill. Suddenly, he felt his body convulse. His consciousness became blurry, and he gradually fell to the ground. Looking at Duan Yichen's fallen body, Fire pursed his lips and asked, Xiao Shu, am I too cruel? The small tree tilted its head and blinked its big eyes curiously, as if it did not understand what Fire meant. Actually, Duan Yichen is not a bad person. Although he also came to encircle and annihilate Lord Yin Xiao, he has taken good care of us along the way. During the 3 days that Master was unconscious, he also took good care of me. However, in my heart, the most important thing is Master. As long as it is for Master, I can do anything cruel. Chapter 12:19. Fire's eyes gradually turned from hesitation to determination. I can't let anyone discover our identities. Otherwise, it will bring danger to Master. So letting Duan Yichen lose his memories for the past few days is the best decision. What's more, this guy has ulterior motives towards Master. I don't want Master to have any more dealings with him. If he forgets Master, he will definitely not pester her. The small tree looked at Fire in confusion, its big watery eyes filled with doubt. Forget it, you're still young. You don't understand the matters of your parents. Fire lowered his head and gently caressed the head of the small tree. But I know the pain of losing a loved one, so I have to protect their safety even if I have to spend my entire life. I won't let them separate. The small tree raised its chubby arm and placed it on Fire's arm, as if it was comforting her. Fire laughed. Little tree, don't let Master know about this matter, otherwise, little Mo and I will be finished. If Xiao Mo hadn't secretly passed her the pill, she would have been dead. She couldn't make Duan Yichen lose his memories, therefore. Once Yin Luofeng found out, it would also affect little Mo. The small tree nodded sensibly and said in a childish voice, All right. Kill all of these people. Don't waste any more time. After we kill them, we'll go find Master. Fire raised his head, his eyes filled with flames as he looked at the shouting people, his body surging with killing intent. Puchi. As soon as she finished speaking, the vines turned into sharp thorns and pierced into the chests of those people. Blood seeped out from his chest and dyed his clothes red. With a wave of the small tree's hand, all the vines were retracted. The corpses of those people fell from the sky and piled up into a mountain. Although Fire had killed a lot of people in this life, and even the small tree was stained with blood for the first time, they were not bloodthirsty people. The spiritual beasts were all used, and killing people was not their intention. If not for Zilien's jade flute, they would not have been able to control themselves and attack Yin Luofeng. Therefore, after the small tree whipped them 100 times, it put them down.
You can leave now.
Fire placed his hands on his hips and arrogantly raised his chin. This matter is not your fault, so I will not kill you. That 100 lashes just now is your punishment. I hope that you will not encounter such a thing again in the future. Roar. All the beasts roared, looked at Fire gratefully, and quickly ran down the mountain. Let's go. Fire bent down, picked up the small tree, and walked down the mountain. Not long after they left, Duan Ichen opened his eyes in a daze. He rubbed his aching forehead and frowned. What happened? Am I not here to join in the fun with those people who came to encircle the ghost emperor? Why am I here? He had obviously not woken up yet, but when he saw the mountain of corpses, he was obviously shocked. These are the experts from the major forces? What exactly happened? How come I don't remember anything? His head ached, and he staggered to his feet. No, this place is not safe. I have to leave as soon as possible. It was night. The moonlight was like water. In the inn at the foot of Phoenix Mountain, two bodies were entangled on a large bed. Sweat flowed down their bodies. Yun Luo Feng lay on the bed, his hand caressing the man's handsome face as he narrowed his eyes. Yun Xiao, I've said it before, I'm up, you're down. Chapter 12:20. Yun Xiao lowered his head and gently kissed the young girl's lips. His magnetic voice was filled with affection. I don't want you to be tired. Yun Luo Feng gently closed her eyes. As Yun Xiao moved, she felt a wave of spirit energy continuously flowing through her body, converging into a stream. Even though she did not continue to break through, it made the spiritual energy in her body more stable. This is the benefit of dual cultivation? Yun Luo Feng, who had enjoyed the benefits, had a faint smile on her lips. She hugged Yun Xiao with both arms and moved her body forward. 3 days and 3 nights. None of them left the room, as if they wanted to vent all their yearning for the past few days. Fire and the small tree also waited outside the room for the entire night. They wanted to return to the divine grimoire space, but they were too embarrassed to go in and disturb Yun Luo Feng. Originally, Fire thought that the battle of 3 days and 3 nights would definitely cause Yun Xiao to collapse. However, when she saw Yun Xiao again, it was as if nothing had happened to this man. Not only did he not show any signs of weakness, he was even more energetic than before. Of course, Fire did not know that because of their physiques, when Yun Luo Feng was enjoying the benefits, Yun Xiao was also sharing the benefits. It was just that he did not realize it himself. Even without the nourishment of spiritual energy, with Yun Xiao's current strength, even if he fought for another 300 rounds, he would not be weak. Otherwise, why would the women beside the strong be so nourished that their faces were flushed red? It was precisely because the stronger one was, the stronger one's physique would be. Not to mention not getting out of bed for 3 days and 3 nights, even if it was another 3 days, nothing would happen. Master, shouldn't we set off? Fire looked at Yun Luo Feng, who was being hugged by Yun Xiao, and the smile on his face carried a hint of ambiguity. I know that the two of you have reunited after a long time, so you must be warm again. However, you have already stayed in bed for 3 days and 3 nights, so you should consider the feelings of us single people. Yun Luo Feng raised his eyebrows and smiled lightly. Fire, you and the small tree go to the divine grimoire space and wait for me. After saying this, Yun Luo Feng recalled them back to the divine grimoire space and turned to look at Yun Xiao. If you have anything you want to ask, you can ask it now. Just who is it? Yun Xiao pondered for a moment before asking. The person he was asking was naturally the small tree. I once nurtured a child from a seed I obtained in Yellow Spring City. Yun Luo Feng raised the corners of his lips. Back then, not long after you left, he was already born. Because his initial appearance was based on my ideas, I made him look like you. Yin Xiao lowered his eyes and stared deeply at the young girl's beautiful face. His gaze was filled with endless yearning. Feng, I'm honored that I was the first person you thought of when you helped him design his appearance. Yun Luo Feng smiled. Yun Xiao, in this world, only you can make me worry so much. Ever since she had arrived on this mainland, Yun Xiao had always been by her side. He had even willingly concealed all his brilliance for her. How fortunate was she to be able to obtain his favor. Let's go. It's almost time for me to ask for leave. I should return to the Western Continent Academy. I'll go with you. Yun Xiao gently wrapped her arms around Yun Luofeng's waist. She lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. From now on, wherever you go, I will follow you. Wasn't there a saying that went, if you marry a chicken, follow the chicken, and if you marry a dog, follow the dogs? He had chosen to become a member of the Yun family, so he would follow her wherever she went. Chapter 12:21. Yun Xiao, you mean? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes, the smile on his lips filled with malice. You want to marry me? Yun Zhao's gaze was fixed on Yun Luofeng. You don't want to take responsibility? I will definitely take responsibility for you. Yun Luofeng stood on his tiptoes and kissed Yun Zhao's lips. After we've dealt with the enemies here, we'll go home and get married. Feeling the warmth on her lips, Yun Xiao raised his hand and hugged the young girl's body tightly. That action seemed to melt her into his bones and blood. Inseparable for life. After the kiss, Yun Luofeng's hand landed on Yun Zhao's chest and gently pushed him away. Yun Xiao, during the time I wasn't here, you've attracted a lot of peach blossoms, especially that girl in purple who played the flute. I won't have peach blossoms. Yun Xiao raised his eyes and stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng was stunned and raised his head to look at the handsome and cold man in front of him. The man's voice was filled with killing intent, because I will break all the flowers. Peach blossoms? Just break them. He had never been someone who had tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, so what if he broke those peach blossoms?
Then what about me?
Yun Luofeng looked at the man with a smile that wasn't a smile and asked. The man's expression was only serious when he was facing her. You're not a flower. Then what am I? You are. Yun Xiao pulled Yun Luofeng's hand and pressed it tightly against his chest. You are this. Yun Luofeng's hand felt the man's beating heart in his chest, causing her heart to skip a beat. You are my heart. If you're not here, then my heart won't be here either. Yun Xiao stared at Yun Luofeng seriously and attentively. If someone else had said this, Yun Luofeng would definitely have thought of it as flowery words. But the person who said this was Yun Xiao. It was the Yun Xiao who never lied, nor did she know how to use flowery words. Every word he said came from the bottom of his heart and expressed his true feelings. How could she not believe this kind of man? Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng withdrew her hand. She touched her burning cheeks and turned her head to the other side. Let's go.
All right.
Yun Zhao's gaze continued to follow Yun Luofeng. Within his deep black eyes, that figure was exceptionally clear. West Continent College. In the classroom, the middle-aged man's cold gaze swept over the many students below. His expression was very ugly. Yun Luofeng hasn't arrived yet? The little lowly furrowed her brows. She opened her mouth to speak, but when Enzeheo saw this, he hurriedly pulled on her sleeve. Miss, just bear with it. Wang Yizhi is like the sun at high noon. He's not easy to deal with. Little Loli said unhappily, but she offended Wang Mujing in order to save us. Her voice was very soft, so soft that it was almost inaudible. However, Enzeheo's ears were sharp enough to hear the little Loli's murmur. That day, after Yun Luofeng left the academy, the few old men in the elders' assembly did not want Wang Mujing's uncle, Wang Yizhi, to have any contact with Yun Luofeng. They had specially arranged for him to take care of other disciples, but they had not expected that Wang Yizhi would bribe the protector of the elders' assembly and transfer him to Yun Luofeng's academy. In addition, during this period of time, the elders had been busy with other matters, so no one had discovered this. However, when Wang Yizhi had confidently come to avenge his nephew, he suddenly realized that Yun Luofeng had not come to the academy. Moreover, he had been gone for more than half a month. Chapter 12:22. The rage in Wang Yizhi's heart grew as he thought of his nephew's miserable state of being bullied by her. His face darkened the entire day, causing all the students in the hall to be on tenterhooks. When Yun Luofeng arrives, get him to come see me. Wang Yizhi scoffed coldly and turned to walk out of the hall. No matter how long Yun Luofeng runs away, there will come a day when he returns. When that time comes, he will make her pay a painful price. In Academy City, the streets were bustling with people and carriages. Yun Luofeng held the back of her head with both hands and narrowed her eyes. The corners of her lips curled into an evil smile. Her black eyes were incomparably deep as she stared deeply at the street in front of her. Yun Xiao, do you plan to come with me to the academy or stay here? Yun Xiao paused in her footsteps and turned her eyes towards the young girl beside her. After a moment of silence, she said, I have no interest in the academy, so I'll wait for you here. All right, Yun Luofeng put down her hand, her slightly raised brows full of smiles. Then let's go take a look at the house first and settle down here. Now that you're here, I won't stay in the academy in the future. Honestly speaking, the cultivation rooms in the academy were not very attractive to her. What she needed was the fruit of the soul. If not for that, she would not have stayed in the academy. Master, why don't you ask Yun Xiao to help you get the fruit of the soul? Little Mo's puzzled voice sounded from within her soul. With Yun Xiao's power, as long as Yun Luofeng asked, he could do it. But Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a shallow smile. Firstly, I don't know where the fruit of the soul is for now. Secondly, I don't want to fall out with West Continent Academy. After all, those cheap masters have been very good to me, and I don't want to hurt their hearts. Thirdly, she paused and continued, I won't ask for Yun Xiao's help for things that I can do with my own power, even if he's my man. Little Mo fell silent. He had followed Yun Luofeng for 2 lifetimes and naturally understood Yun Luofeng's character. If she could complete a task by herself, she would never ask for help from others. Furthermore, if the Western Continent Academy had betrayed her, even if she had to forcefully seize it, she would snatch the soul fruit. It was precisely because the few elders in the Western Continent Academy treated her well that if she had any other way, she would definitely not shed all pretense of cordiality with them. Master, Little Mo sighed, no matter what you do, I will accompany you. Yun Luofeng lowered his eyes and smiled. Thank you, Little Mo. The young girl's voice warmed Little Mo's heart. At that moment, he clearly understood that he was willing to do anything for her. After a while, Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao found a house and bought it at a very reasonable price. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into an angle as she stared at the fresh and elegant courtyard in front of her. She lowered her eyes and a faint luster appeared on her beautiful face. Yun Xiao, from today onwards, this place will be our temporary home. No matter how busy she was in the academy, she knew that in this house, there was a man who had always been waiting for her. Hearing the young girl's words, Yun Xiao hugged her waist from behind and used his chin to rub against her head. A low and hoarse voice sounded in her ear. Chapter 12:23. I'll wait for you here. Yun Luofeng's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and looked at the man standing in front of her. Yun Xiao, should we hire some maids and cooks? No need. Yun Xiao shook her head and smiled. I'm enough. We don't need extra people to disturb our lives. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng's smile grew. I've been away from the academy for about half a month. I'll be going to the academy later. This place isn't very far from the academy. Yun Xiao pondered for a moment before continuing. So, if you're in any danger, I can rush over to save you. He indulged her in everything. But that didn't mean that he was willing to put her in danger. As long as she was in any danger, he would rush over without a care for anything else. Fire, small tree, Little Mo. As soon as Yun Luofeng's voice fell, a few figures appeared beside her. She continued, during this time, I'll give you your freedom. I won't let you stay in the divine grimoire space. You can come and go as you please. Master, I love you too much. Little Mo's eyes lit up. He excitedly rushed towards Yun Luofeng. He pouted his lips and planned to kiss Yun Luofeng's cheek. Unfortunately, before he could reach Yun Luofeng's side, a large hand grabbed him from behind and pulled him away from Yun Luofeng. He needs to be disciplined. Yun Zhao's low voice rang out as his cold eyes stared warningly at Xiao Mo, who was in his hands. For the first time, Little Mo regretted facilitating Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao. Because this man was a complete vinegar jar. Even he was not allowed to get close to his master. What made Little Mo despair was that Yun Luofeng only glanced at him and said, do whatever you want. Master. Seeing that Yun Luofeng was about to leave, little Mo cried out in panic, "You can't value a lover over friend. We've been friends for 2 lifetimes. How can you abandon me?" No matter how little Mo screamed, Yun Luofeng didn't stop and left the courtyard. 2 lines of tears of despair flowed down little Mo's cheeks. He cried miserably, "You're a woman who values a lover over a friend." His cries passed through the walls of the courtyard and permeated outside the house. If it was an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't meddle in other people's business. However, there were always those who thought they were in the right and stood up to criticize the other party. Just as Yun Xiao was about to turn around and leave with Xiao Mo, an angry shout came from outside the door. "Even if the child did something wrong, you can't hit him like this. Look at how pitiful this child is crying. How can you bear to treat him like this? Are you still his father?" Yun Zhao's cold eyes swept towards the meddlesome woman standing outside the main door as his handsome face grew increasingly solemn. Yun Xiao, who was with Yun Luofeng, never wore that mask. Hence, at this moment, his handsome and grim features were clearly seen by the woman. A stunned look flashed across the woman's eyes. A complicated and regretful expression appeared on her beautiful face. What she felt complicated was that such a handsome man would treat a child so harshly. It was a pity that such a peerless man was already married and had a child. Scram. The man did not say anything else, but that one word shook the woman's heart. She felt as if all her internal organs had been shaken and turned numb. "Don't you think that you've done something wrong?" the beautiful woman asked righteously. "He's only a child. How could you mistreat him like this?" Chapter 12:24. As she spoke, the woman's leg was about to cross the threshold. A murderous intent flashed across Yun Zhao's eyes. "If you dare to take another step through the door, I'll cut it off immediately." The man's cold and murderous voice caused the woman's body to tremble, and she subconsciously retracted her leg. This man's aura is too strong, so strong that perhaps even Master is not as strong as him. The beautiful woman frowned. "Your child is crying so pitifully. Could it be that you have the heart to do so?"
Bang.
The man waved his sleeves and a wave of energy shot out, sending the woman's body flying violently. At the same time, he slammed the door shut, locking the beautiful woman outside. Senior Sister Mingqi. When they saw the beautiful woman fall, the crowd behind her reacted and hurriedly helped her up. "Senior Sister Mingqi, are you all right?" The beautiful woman broke away from the crowd's support, and a strange light flashed across her beautiful eyes. "I'm fine. I just saw an injustice. Unfortunately, I'm not strong enough, and I can't save that child. Now, I can only drop the matter." "Senior Sister Mingqi, this isn't your fault. It's the parents who are inhumane. They're actually abusing their child." Everyone spoke up for the injustice. Hearing these people's words, the beautiful woman felt a little better. "I don't think this man is a bad person. In comparison, the child's mother is definitely not a good person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have abandoned the child and left a man to face a child." At this moment, the beautiful woman's mind was already filled with the scene of abandonment. Her heart unconsciously sympathized with Yun Xiao, and she was no longer as angry as before. In her eyes, this man must have been abandoned by his wife, which was why he had flown into a rage out of humiliation and vented his anger on the child. The poor child was abandoned by his irresponsible mother and abused by his father. If she was the child's mother, she would never abandon such a delicate and jade-carved boy. "Let's go back to the academy first." Yao Mingqi's eyes were filled with pity. She took one last look at the tightly shut door before turning around and leading a group of people back to the academy. In the courtyard, Xiao Mo had already shut his mouth. The corners of his eyes were still glistening with tears as he carefully looked at Yun Xiao. "Did I get into trouble?" He only wanted to lament and complain to keep Yun Luofeng here. Who would have thought that a meddlesome woman would jump out? Her master's man was so outstanding. What if other women took a fancy to him? The more little Mo thought about it, the more he regretted it. If he had known this would happen, he would have obediently accepted the discipline. Yun Zhao's eyes were cold, and his face was expressionless. An ant can't stir up a storm. In other words, he didn't care about that woman's strength. If she dared to come forward and pester him, he would definitely break her mercilessly. Little Mo let out a sigh of relief. He was very confident in Yun Xiao. This man only had his master in his eyes and in his heart. If there were really women who were to send themselves to his doorstep, he would be the first to not let them off. Just as Yun Luofeng stepped through the gates of the academy, he noticed some people's cautious and furtive gazes. Their eyes were filled with sympathy and pity. When they saw Yun Luofeng's gaze, they hurriedly looked away and pretended as if nothing had happened. Yun Luofeng frowned slightly. He did not know what had happened, but when she found her school, she understood why those people were looking at her with such a gaze. Chapter 12:25. Yun Luofeng. Wang Yizhi was teaching students when he suddenly noticed Yun Luofeng at the door. He flew into a rage. "You've been absent for so many days and you still dare to come to the academy. Who gave you the courage to not come to the academy for half a month?" Yun Luofeng's evil eyes glanced at Wang Yizhi. "I've asked for leave, don't you know?" Actually, this matter was to be blamed on the void. He had originally arranged for someone else to manage the Soul Teacher Hall, so he sent someone to pass Yun Luofeng's letter to that teacher, who knew that Wang Yizhi would bribe him and switch him over. That teacher was so busy that he forgot about this matter, so Wang Yizhi didn't even know that Yun Luofeng had handed over the letter. "What letter? I didn't receive it." Wang Yizhi snorted. "You've been absent for more than half a month. According to the rules, you'll be expelled from the academy. However, I can give you a chance. I'll whip you 100 times.
Hua.
And Zaheo hurriedly stood up. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. "Miss Yun is a girl and has a weaker physique. I'm willing to take the punishment for her." After all, Yun Luofeng had offended Wang Yizhi and his nephew because of him. He should take the punishment for her. "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to take the punishment for her?" Wang Yizhi sneered and said disdainfully, "Today, I'm going to teach Yun Luofeng a lesson. If anyone dares to plead for her, I'll expel him from the academy." And Zaheo wanted to say something, but he suddenly received a signal from Yun Luofeng. This caused him to swallow the words that were on the tip of his tongue. His brows were filled with worry. "Expel me from the academy? I'm afraid you don't have that right." The girl's voice was cold and heartless. Her slightly raised brows were domineering and extremely arrogant. "In this academy, you're the first person who dares to speak to me like this." Wang Yizhi sneered. His slightly narrowed eyes flashed with a fierce light. "So, I'll let you know the consequences of disobeying a teacher."
Boom.
Enraged, Wang Yizhi unleashed the pressure from his body and launched an attack on Yun Luofeng. His gaze was extremely sharp, like a sharp sword that could kill without leaving a trace. "Miss Yun." And Zaheo was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. However, he could only watch helplessly as Wang Yizhi charged towards Yun Luofeng. Just as the slap was about to land on the young girl's forehead, the young girl finally moved. Bang. She took 2 steps to the side and tightly grasped Wang Yizhi's palm. Under everyone's shocked gaze, she suddenly pulled back her hand, and Wang Yizhi's body was smashed to the ground in front of everyone. "I told you, I've asked for leave before." Wang Yizhi's fall wasn't light. He stood up with his hands on his waist and angrily glared at Yun Luofeng. "You dare to hit me? Good, very good. Since you even dare to beat me up, then don't even think about staying here. I will definitely expel you from the academy." Yun Luofeng didn't look at him anymore. He turned around and walked in the direction of the cultivation room. She had originally thought that the teachers of the Western Continent Academy were very strong, but now it seemed that they were only SOSO. Rather than wasting time here, he might as well cultivate on his own. "Yun Luofeng!" Wang Yizhi roared angrily. His roar reverberated through the entire academy and lingered for a long time. The disciples in the Soul Teacher Hall were all stunned. No one thought that Yun Luofeng would dare to treat Wang Yizhi like this. After all, Wang Yizhi was also a teacher of the academy. Chapter 12:26. Moments later, The entire academy was in an uproar. It was said that the disciple who entered the academy today had actually beaten up Wang Yizhi. Even the #1 disciple on the heaven list did not have such guts in the past. It seemed that this year, the West Continent Academy was destined to not be peaceful. In the West Continent Academy, there was a clear hierarchy. Other than the elusive dean, the elders were the most respected, followed by the hall masters. The academy was divided into a few halls, namely the Morning Hall, Medical Hall, Beast Taming Hall, and Steward Hall. The first 3 halls corresponded to the subjects that the students studied. Similarly, once one reached the Earth list, one had the right to enter the various halls and did not need to stay in the academy to continue studying. As for the Steward Hall, as the name suggested, it was used to punish disciples who made mistakes. It could be said that the Steward Hall's hall master had the highest authority in the 4 halls. Of course, if a student wanted to be above the hall masters, they had to enter the heaven list. Only the people on the heaven list had a status below the elders. Under the hall master were the teachers of the various academies. These teachers did not have a high status in the academy, but they had the right to control the academy's disciples. At this moment, in the Steward Hall, the various hall masters gathered and looked coldly at the crying Wang Yizhi. Hall master, this disciple called Yun Luofeng is too much. He completely does not know how to respect his teachers. Our academy cannot allow such a student to stay. Wang Yizhi cried with snot and tears, his eyes filled with grievance, as if he had really been bullied by Yun Luofeng. The Steward Hall's hall master frowned. According to what you said, Yun Luofeng is indeed too much. He, the Morning Hall's hall master, smiled faintly, his fingers stroking his beard, and said, I think that Wang Yizhi did not know right from wrong and punished his disciple. As far as I know, Yun Luofeng did indeed submit a leave letter. As for who approved it, I do not know. Humph. So, what if he has a leave letter? Even if he has taken leave, he cannot do anything to a teacher. Our academy cannot accept such a disciple. I think that Yun Luofeng should be kicked out of the academy. The one who said this was the Medical Hall's hall master. His expression was very ugly, and his tone was stern. This old antique valued respecting teachers the most. How could he allow a disciple like Yun Luofeng to exist? So, what if Wang Yizhi was wrong? If the teacher judged her to be wrong, then she was wrong. As a student, she could only swallow the bitter pill. Who allowed her to lay her hands on her teacher? We don't know how to decide on this matter. Why don't we wait for the elders to finish their tasks before reporting to the elders and letting them make a decision? The Beast Taming Hall's hall master frowned and suggested, the elder is very busy right now. How can we bother him over such a small matter? The Medical Hall master sneered. Yun Luofeng doesn't respect his teacher. He should be expelled. A sinister glint flashed across Wang Yizhi's eyes when he heard the Medical Hall master's words. Yun Luofeng, you're still a little too inexperienced to fight me. How about this? The hall leader of the Morning Hall stood up, the corners of his lips curled into a small smile. If Yun Luofeng can charge into the Earth ranking within 5 days, he will have the right to join any of the halls. At that time, his status will be more noble than Wang Yizhi's. Beating him up won't be a big deal. What do you all think? Within 5 days? The hall master of the Medical Hall laughed out loud. All right, I'll give him this chance. Chapter 12:27. Enter the Earth list in 5 days? That was impossible. The Medical Hall master snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and quickly walked out of the duty hall. The others also dispersed when they saw him leave. This is as far as I can help her. The hall master of the Morning Hall laughed. His aged eyes were filled with happiness. He quickly walked out and disappeared under the sunlight in the courtyard. In the cultivation room, Yun Luofeng had just stepped into the room when a knock came from the door. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Come in." As soon as she finished speaking, the door was pushed open and an old man dressed in navy blue robes walked in. What's the matter? Yun Luofeng looked at the old man who had entered the room and raised her eyebrows. Yun girl, I have come to find you for something. The old man smiled. Right, I haven't introduced myself. I and the Hall Master of the Morning Hall, Mu Ran. Hall Master of the Morning Hall? After entering the academy, Yun Luofeng had learned about the division of power in the academy. So, when she heard that the person in front of her was the Hall Master of the Morning Hall, she could not help but frown. She did not understand the other's background. You hit Wang Yiji? Mu Ran asked straightforwardly. Yun Luofeng laughed arrogantly. He deserves a beating. Mu Ran immediately fell silent. This girl was just like what that person had said. She was arrogant and wild, but she didn't make people feel disgusted by her. Girl, you've caused trouble this time. Wang Yiji has reported this to the duty hall and wants to kick you out of the academy. Fortunately, I have fought for an opportunity for you. As long as you enter the Earth list in 5 days, this punishment will be lifted. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows and looked at Mu Ran. You can be sure that I can enter the Earth list in 5 days. Mu Ran laughed involuntarily. If it was someone else, they might not have this ability. But if it was you, can you do it?
Why?
Also, why are you helping me? Because I owe someone a favor. Mu Ran smiled as she looked at Yun Luofeng. I promised him that I would take care of you after you came here. Yun Luofeng fell silent. She really could not think of who was helping her behind the scenes. So she asked, Who do you owe? Chen Yuqing. Chen Yuqing? Yun Luofeng was startled, and a trace of helplessness flashed across her lowered eyes. So, Chen Yuqing had been helping her behind the scenes. Girl, you only have 5 days. This is all I can help you with. If you can't enter the Earth list, I won't be able to protect you. Mu Ran stood up, the smile on his face unchanged. Now I won't disturb your cultivation. As he finished speaking, he turned and walked out, closing Yun Luofeng's door on the way. 5 days. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin. 5 days is enough. At this time, she did not choose to look for her cheap masters. Because such a small matter did not require the help of others. She could totally rely on her own strength to stay in the academy. At this thought, she stood up and walked out. In the Western Continent Academy. There was a special competition arena, and disciples were not allowed to fight in private. At this moment, the arena was bustling with noise, and it was as lively as a market. However, when Yun Luofeng stepped into the martial arts arena, the entire arena quietened down. It's her? I think she's called Yun Luofeng? Yes, she's the Yun Luofeng who dared to injure Wang Yiji. I heard that the Steward's Hall has set a rule for Yun Luofeng. If she can enter the Earth list within 5 days, her punishment will be waived. Otherwise, she will be expelled from the academy. Chapter 12:28. 5 days? TSK, how's that possible in 5 days? The disciples who can enter the Earth list are all venerable ones. Even the last one is a beginner, venerable one. Every one of them is more powerful than Wang Yiji. I really don't know where she gets her confidence to come here. If I were her, I'd pack up and get lost. That's better than embarrassing myself here. The crowd discussed among themselves as they watched the young lady walk toward the ring. Their eyes were filled with mockery and mockery. At that moment, 2 young men were flattering each other around the ring. They did not even notice Yun Luofeng, who was walking toward them. Brother Hu, congratulations. You've finally entered the 20th place on the Earth list, unlike me, who's still hovering around the 50th place. You're flattering me. I was just lucky. Brother Lin, you're younger than me. In a few years, you'll definitely surpass me. The young man, who was addressed as Brother Lin, wanted to flatter Hu Xiong again, but his line of sight was blocked. He was stunned. When he looked up, he saw a young lady in white standing in front of him. The 20th place on the Earth list? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and curled his lips into a faint smile. I want to challenge you. The young lady's devilish voice reverberated in the crowd. It was deafening, and everyone was dumbfounded.
What?
Is she really going to challenge the Earth list? Why did she not choose Lin Xiong, who's ranked 50th, but Hu Lin, who's ranked 20th? You want to challenge me? Hu Lin pointed at himself in disbelief. Young lady, I don't have a sense of propriety when I fight. If I'm not careful, I'll break someone's limbs. Are you sure you want to challenge me with your skinny arms and legs? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows. That's right, I want to challenge you. After confirming the answer from the young lady, Hu Lin could not help but burst out laughing. Since you want to challenge me, I'll grant your wish. Come, let's fight in the ring. Hu Lin had broken through to the advanced, venerable realm. Therefore, he was confident that Yun Luofeng was no match for him. Under everyone's gaze, Yun Luofeng and Hu Lin had already walked into the arena. I'll let you make 3 moves first. Hu Lin pointed 3 fingers at Yun Luofeng disdainfully, his face full of ridicule and contempt. Yun Luofeng's devilish eyes swept over him, but he didn't stand on ceremony. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Hu Lin. Hu Lin's expression suddenly changed, and cold sweat flowed down his forehead. He hurriedly raised his hand to meet Yun Luofeng's attack.
Boom.
With a loud bang, Hu Lin's body was sent flying out of the arena. Silence. The entire martial arena was deathly silent. The people who had been clamoring were dumbfounded by Yun Luofeng's actions. They stared dumbfoundedly at the young girl with her right hand behind her back. Cough, cough. Hu Lin coughed dryly and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Yun Luofeng with an ugly expression. You're a Holy Spirit? Holy Spirit, these 3 words caused a commotion in the crowd. Even in the 7 continents where Holy Spirit practitioners could be found everywhere, reaching the Holy Spirit realm at such a young age would still shock everyone.
Yes.
Yun Luofeng nodded gently in response to Hu Lin's confusion. In the beginning, she hadn't wanted to reveal her abilities, as she was afraid that her motive for coming would be discovered. However, she had now thought it through. The more she hid, the more people would bully her. Hence, why would she continue to hide her abilities? Fuck. Hu Lin cursed. You're a Holy Spirit, yet you're challenging a venerable realm like me. Don't you have any shame? There are so many people on the Earth list. Why did you challenge me instead of the others? Chapter 12:29. Hu Lin felt very wronged. He was only a venerable spiritualist. The difference in strength was huge, but Yun Luofeng just had to find him. How could he not feel wronged? Yun Luofeng shrugged. Here, I only heard your ranking. I don't know what the others are ranked. Are you going to challenge the 50th place next to me? Hu Lin's voice suddenly disappeared. He did not know what to say. He deserved to be unlucky? Wasn't he just chatting with someone? Why did he have to encounter such a thing? Brother Hu? Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, Lin Xiong's entire body trembled. He smiled awkwardly and said, This matter has nothing to do with me. Who told you to rank higher than me? If she doesn't look for you, does she want to look for me? I'm only a beginner, venerable spiritualist. Hu Lin glared at Lin Xiong angrily. He crawled up from the ground and snorted. I'm unlucky. Thinking about how arrogant he looked earlier, Hu Lin wanted to find a hole to hide in. Make way, make way. At this moment, a familiar voice came from the back of the crowd. And Zaheo squeezed through the crowd with great difficulty and saw Hu Lin glaring at Yun Luofeng. His expression instantly changed, and he looked anxious. However, Hu Lin did not say anything in the end. He turned around and walked out of the crowd. And Zaheo hurried to Yun Luofeng's side and asked anxiously, Miss Yun, how did you offend Hu Lin? Yun Luofeng's gaze fell on Zaheo. Wise. This Hu Lin's younger brother is ranked 10th on the heaven list. And Zaheo wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. You actually offended him. You're finished. There were only 10 disciples on the heaven list, but each of them was an elite. Even the person ranked 10th had strength surpassing a Holy Spirit. Above a Holy Spirit, there were a few levels. They were Holy King, Holy Venerate, and Holy Lord. Each level was the same as before. It was also divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. However, only Holy Kings were qualified to enter the heaven list. Therefore, the geniuses on the heaven list were all exceptionally talented. I'm tired. Yun Luofeng yawned and said lazily, I'll go back and rest first. Miss Yun. Seeing Yun Luofeng turn around and walk out the door, and Zaheo hurriedly chased after him. His expression was so anxious that his face had changed color. He was afraid that the genius on the Heaven ranking would come looking for Yun Luofeng to settle the score. Heaven Series Cultivation Room. On the exquisite and luxurious bed, the man's enchanting and peerless figure was leaning on the chaise longue. His pair of seductive fox-like eyes shone with a shrewd and cunning light. "You said that my big brother was defeated by a little girl?" His voice rang out lazily, and a smile appeared on his peerless face. If Ji Jutian's charm was only on the surface, it was more overbearing and arrogant. This man, on the other hand, was charming to the bone. Every frown and smile of his was extremely charming, like a peerless beauty, so beautiful that it made one forget to breathe. Senior brother, Senior brother, Hu Lin was indeed defeated by a new little girl. That little girl even injured Wang Yizhi in front of everyone. This girl is quite interesting. My big brother isn't strong, but he's an advanced, venerable martial artist. It's not easy for her to defeat him. The man waved his hand and draped a peach-colored robe over his body. His lips curled into a fox-like smile. I'd like to meet this little girl. Chapter 1230. Junior Brother. At this moment, a voice came from outside the door. Hu Li frowned slightly. Perhaps he was very impatient with the person who came. Just as he was about to tell the person beside him to say that he was not there, the door was pushed open by a slender hand. If Xiao Imo was here, he would definitely recognize the woman who came in. It was the nosy person from before. Yao Mingqi walked in quickly and walked towards Hu Li. "Junior brother, I'm back. What's wrong? Don't you welcome me?" Hu Li's expression was slightly impatient. "I still have something to do. If you want someone to accompany you, you can go find someone else." "I'm sorry, but I won't be accompanying you." "Junior brother, why are you so cold to me? After all, I was bullied outside today." Yao Mingqi sat down angrily and poured herself a cup of tea. Her face was full of anger. Hearing this, Hu Li's eyes flashed with excitement. Yao Mingqi was bullied outside? Ha ha ha, that's great. Who asked this woman to bother him all day long? Senior brother, the disciple who had not left, looked at Hu Li and reminded him speechlessly. "Senior brother, even if you're so excited to see senior sister Yao being bullied, can you not show it so obviously? It's as if you really want someone to bully senior sister Yao." Hu Li also felt that his excitement was too obvious. He hurriedly coughed twice and asked, "What happened?" Fortunately, Yao Mingqi was currently in a state of anger and did not notice Hu Li's flash of excitement. "On my way back today, I saw a man lecturing a child. The child was crying miserably. I was so angry that I wanted to stop the man." "Oh." Hu Li's eyes flashed slightly. "Did the man bully you?" "No." Yao Mingqi's eyes were filled with pity. "He didn't bully me, and I sympathize with him. This man is also very pitiful. The one who really goes too far is the woman who abandons her husband and son. If I see that cruel woman, I will definitely tear her into pieces." When Hu Li saw the light in Yao Mingqi's eyes when she talked about the man, a smile gradually appeared on his face. "That's great. Yao Mingqi, this woman, was finally interested in other men. He could finally get rid of her. Junior brother, don't you think that woman is too much?" Yao Mingqi said angrily. "How can there be such a cruel woman in this world? Such a handsome husband, such a delicate child. She's actually willing to abandon them. If it were me, I would definitely not do such a thing. If he hadn't been abandoned by a woman, why was there no one in the yard where the man lived? What's more, if he hadn't been hurt before, this man wouldn't be so cold and heartless towards others. Especially to a woman like her, he would choose to use such a violent method." Yao Mingqi felt sympathy for Yun Xiao, but she didn't know that in this man's heart, only Yun Luofeng was special. Other than in front of Yun Luofeng, he would melt all the ice in front of him. He would never treat other women differently. Not bad. Hu Li nodded in agreement. "If it were you, you definitely wouldn't abandon that man. Senior apprentice Sister Mingqi, since you sympathize with him so much, why don't you go find him?" It would be best if she went now and returned some peace to herself. No, he's just been hurt. Even if I go, I won't be able to comfort him. Instead, I'll be rejected by him. Yao Mingqi sighed a little dejectedly. However, it's a good thing I remember where his house is. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Chapter 1231. After saying this, Yao Mingqi stood up and said with a determined gaze, "Junior brother, be a good person to the end. I will use my entire life's energy to heal the damage he has suffered in his heart. I will not give up. Furthermore, if I were that child's mother, I would never let anyone hurt him. Go, go, I will definitely support you." Hu Li heaved a sigh of relief. Right now, he only wanted to get rid of this pestering woman. "Thank you, junior brother. When I'm done, I will treat you to a meal." "No need for a meal, just don't appear in front of me again." Hu Li raised the corners of his lips and leaned lazily on the chaise longue. He and Yao Mingqi were ranked 9th and 10th respectively, but their strengths were similar. In fact, he was even stronger. However, he had no interest in this ranking, so he had never competed with Yao Mingqi for a ranking. Because of this, Yao Mingqi thought that he had fallen in love with her and had given the 9th place to her. And because of this misunderstanding, he had been pestered for many years thinking of those rumors. Hu Li had the urge to vomit. Yao Mingqi was not bad-looking, but she was not the type he liked. How could he give up his ranking for a woman? The funny thing was, Yao Mingqi thought the same. Even though Hu Li had repeatedly said that he had no other intentions toward her, she still thought that Hu Li was too shy to admit it. "Tell me, how did a stubborn person like Yao Mingqi enter the heaven role?" Hu Li pointed in the direction that Yao Mingqi had left and asked speechlessly. The young disciple pondered for a moment. Senior sister Yao's talent is not bad. Her talent was not bad, coupled with the superior environment that she grew up in. She had successfully entered the heaven role. "I really pity the man who received her sympathy," Hu Li smiled. "Based on my understanding of Yao Mingqi, she definitely doesn't understand the real situation. She just imagined a drama of abandoning her husband and son. She even thinks that what she did was right. When it comes to people like her, I just want to tell you to stay as far away from me as possible." The corner of the young disciple's mouth twitched. "Senior brother, senior sister Yao's nature is not bad. So what?" Hu Li raised his eyebrows and smiled. "I can't stand the way she conducts herself. In comparison, I am more interested in Yun Luofeng." "Senior brother Hu Li, are you going to cause trouble for Yun Luofeng?" The young disciple looked at Hu Li and asked softly. "What do you mean cause trouble? Do you know how to speak?" Hu Li glared at him. "Am I someone who will cause trouble for others? I just want to wait until tomorrow to talk to her about life and ideals. That's not looking for trouble." The young disciple shuddered. He couldn't help but sympathize with those who were interested in senior brother Hu Li. Yun Luofeng didn't stay in the academy for long. Once the sun set, she walked out of the academy. Perhaps because she had beaten up Wang Yiji before, no one dared to stop her, and they could only watch as she left the academy. All these years she had up all it Yun and Yun, mused she. Yun she Yun the Yun. All she had been running all these years only she felt, only and to up. "You're back." Yun Shao raised his head and saw Yun Luofeng standing at the doorway. His cool and handsome face slightly curved. "Dinner has been prepared. I haven't been by your side during this period of time, and you've lost weight." Chapter 1232. Yun Luofeng smiled. "I'm used to the meals you prepare. I'm not used to eating outside food. Even the top chefs in the restaurant aren't as good as you." She slowly walked towards the man. Cultivators could go years without eating because spiritual energy could satisfy their hunger. However, when they weren't cultivating, humans still needed to enjoy food. Moreover, how many people would be able to resist the temptation of such a delicacy? "Yun Shao, your cooking skills are improving."
Yun Luofeng sat down.
She used a spoon to gently scoop a spoonful of lotus porridge and tasted the tea. The fragrance filled her nose and melted in her mouth. leaving an endless aftertaste. As long as you like it. Seeing Yun Luofeng's satisfied expression, Yun Zhao's eyes were full of smiles. If you're willing, I can cook for the rest of my life. Okay. Yun Luofeng raised her brows at the man in front of her. Yun Zhao, after tasting your food, I'm afraid I can't leave you for the rest of my life. She was already very satisfied with her current life. She hoped that there wouldn't be any more disturbances in the future. Oh right, where are your subordinates? Yun Luofeng seemed to remember something and asked. Yun Zhao pondered for a moment and answered. I sent them to find Bai Su. If I'm not wrong, Bai Su has also come to the 7 continents. Bai Su, Yun Luofeng hadn't remembered this man in a long time. Now that she heard Yun Zhao's words, her hand holding the spoon paused. This Bai Su is a scourge. Don't worry. Yun Zhao walked behind Yun Luofeng and gently hugged her from behind. I won't let him hurt you. The man's embrace was very reassuring, so reassuring that she let down her guard. Yun Zhao, I believe you. If he said he wouldn't let Bai Su hurt her, then she would believe him. The next day, early morning, after Yun Luofeng finished her breakfast, she was escorted to the academy by Yun Zhao. But not long after they left, Yao Mingqi sneakily walked to the entrance of the house. Her hand lightly knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. She pondered for a moment, then leaped over the wall and entered the house from the outside. What's that smell? It smells so good. As soon as Yao Mingqi entered the courtyard, she smelled a fragrant aroma. She followed the aroma into the dining room and saw the leftovers on the table that hadn't been cleaned up in time. There are only 2 bowls and 2 pairs of chopsticks. Looks like I was right. This man lives alone with his son. There is no mistress. Yao Mingqi was very happy with her discovery. However, these dishes were made by that man? She didn't expect that although this man looked so cold, his mind was so meticulous. The food he made was very light and suitable for women. If I can become his wife, I will definitely be very happy. I really don't know what kind of woman doesn't know how lucky she is. Yao Mingqi felt indignant for Yun Zhao. At this moment, she picked up a piece of pastry from the plate and placed it in her mouth to taste it. Instantly, her eyes lit up. She had been pampered since she was young and had tasted all kinds of delicacies. However, none of the delicacies could compare to the pastries in front of him. Who let you in? Suddenly, a cold voice rang out from behind Yao Mingqi. It was filled with a dense killing intent. Chapter 1233. Yao Mingqi's body stiffened. She stiffly turned her head and looked at the man standing outside the dining room. She gulped with difficulty. I was worried about your son, so I came to see him. I didn't mean to sneak into your room. Her eyes were filled with tears as she stared at Yun Zhao aggrievedly. She spoke uneasily. Yun Zhao's eyes slowly swept towards Yao Mingqi's hand and noticed that she had just taken a bite of the pastry at this moment. Killing intent surged from his body, covering the sky and covering the earth as it surged towards Yao Mingqi. You've eaten it? Yao Mingqi was scared silly. I've only eaten half a pastry. Why is this man so angry? Who allowed you to eat it? The man's voice became increasingly cold and murderous, causing Yao Mingqi's heart to tremble. I didn't do it on purpose. I was attracted by the fragrance and could not help but walk over. If you mind, I can return you a plate of pastry. Yao Mingqi hurriedly placed the pastry in her hand on the table. She anxiously rubbed the corner of her clothes as tears shimmered in her eyes. She did not know what she had done wrong. The man raised his hand and a powerful force slammed into Yao Mingqi's body. Yao Mingqi spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground in a sorry state. She stared at Yun Zhao in terror. That's right. This man wants to kill me.
Why?
Just because I've eaten a piece of pastry? I really didn't do it on purpose. Please let me go. I'll return you a whole plate of pastry. Yao Mingqi was so frightened that she stumbled back. Her terrified eyes stared at the man's cold and handsome face. Auntie? Right at this moment, a soft and mellow voice sounded from behind Yun Zhao. Xiao Mo's eyes held a smile. Don't you understand? This plate of pastry is not something you can eat. Yun Xiao, this petty man, would only give everything he has to Yun Luofeng. How could he allow anyone else to have a share? Even if the other party had only eaten a piece of pastry, Yao Mingqi bit her pale lips. It's only a piece of pastry. Is there a need for that? Even though the pastry is delicious, it's not particularly precious. Is there a need to kill me over a piece of pastry? I'm from the West Continent Academy. In order to save her life, Yao Mingqi hurriedly reported Western Continent Academy. Indeed, upon hearing these words, Yun Xiao paused for a moment. Of course, he only paused for a moment because Yun Luofeng was in the Western Continent Academy. But in Yao Mingqi's eyes, she thought that Yun Xiao was afraid of the West Continent Academy's power. Young master, please let me go. I am from the Western Continent Academy. If you let me go, I will repay you in the future. Yao Mingqi raised her teary eyes and begged bitterly. Yun Zhao's cold gaze once again landed on her face. Western Continent Academy. So what? Western Continent Academy. So what? Was there a need for him to put her in his eyes? Yao Mingqi's expression changed once again. She did not expect that Yun Xiao would look down on the West Continent Academy. She gritted her teeth and said, Young master, I did not mean to enter your mansion today. That was because I was worried about the little young master. Plus,
I am also worried about you.
Please forgive me for my rashness. Xiao Emo stared blankly. This woman was really interested in Yun Xiao. His gaze shifted and he said with a grin, Ani, are you interested in my father? Yao Mingqi was a little uneasy. She wanted to look at Yun Xiao, but did not dare to look at him directly. She could only lower her head and rub the corner of her clothes. Chapter 1234. Unfortunately, Xiao Emo paused. My father doesn't like you. Yao Mingqi was stunned. She raised her head to look at Xiao Emo and blinked in confusion.
Why?
In any case, she had stood up for him when he was being abused. Logically speaking, shouldn't this child want a mother who can protect him? Why would she say such cruel words? My father only loves my mother. Do you think that you can beat my mother with your charm? Xiao Emo sneered. This woman really doesn't understand the situation. At the very least, she had stood up for him because she was being bullied. That was why he didn't say anything. Now, she doesn't know what's good for her and wants to replace Yun Luofeng's position? Dream on. Yao Mingqi wasn't angry when she heard this. Instead, she hated Yun Xiao and Xiao Emo even more. Look at that damned woman. She abandoned her husband and child, but her husband and child still can't forget about her. Why doesn't a bolt of lightning strike her to death? Father, Xiao Emo blinked and turned to look at Yun Xiao. He blinked furtively. I want to play with this Annie, can I? Yun Xiao, who had wanted to kill Yao Mingqi, retracted his murderous aura and nodded coldly. As you wish. Thank you, father. Xiao Mo's smile was bright, and he said, Father, very smoothly. Yun Xiao glanced at him. Remember to set up a formation around the house. I don't want anyone to break in again. Breaking in was one thing, but she actually dared to eat the pastries he made for Yun Luofeng. Yun Xiao stopped in his tracks. That's right. Make her spit out what she just ate. After throwing this sentence down, Yun Xiao walked out without looking back. Only Xiao Emo and Yao Mingqi were left in the dining room. Yao Mingqi crawled up from the ground and her pale face lit up with a flattering smile. Little master, I offended your father because I spoke up for you. Can you let me go now? Let you go? Xiao Emo sneered. Why should I? Indeed, you misunderstood that he was abusing me, so you stood up to help me. I can't say that you're wrong about this. I can only say that you're too stupid. I don't have any scars on my body. How can you tell that my father beat me up? Yao Mingqi's expression changed. This man was not what she had imagined. Everything that happened before was all a misunderstanding of his own. But you made the biggest mistake. Not only did you steal my father's pastries, but you even had wishful thinking about him. Little Emo raised her chin and said arrogantly, I've seen a lot of women like you, But those women didn't live long. Yao Mingqi's eyes darkened. Brat, now that your father isn't here, don't be too presumptuous. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Just as she finished speaking, she saw Yun Xiao, who had once again appeared at the entrance of the dining hall. Her expression changed drastically, and she laughed dryly. Young master, I was only trying to scare the little master just now. Yun Xiao didn't seem to hear her words and continued walking towards her. Young master, you boom. Yun Xiao punched Yao Mingqi's back. In an instant, she felt the urge to vomit. She opened her mouth and spat out the pastries that she hadn't digested in time. You talk too much. Yun Xiao looked at Xiao Imo. By the time you're done, her pastries will have been digested. Chapter 1235. Xiao Mo's mouth twitched. She was unlucky to have met such a petty man like Yun Xiao.
Bang.
However, just when Yao Mingqi thought Yun Xiao would leave, Yun Xiao's leg had already landed on Yao Mingqi's back. Yao Mingqi was caught off guard and fell head first onto the ground. Her head happened to be covered in her own vomit. Father,
What are you doing now?
Yun Xiao thought for a moment and said, I just remembered that your mother doesn't like people dirtying her territory. If she finds out when she comes back, she will definitely be angry. So, let her lick it clean. When Yao Mingqi heard this, she thought that Yun Xiao was still waiting for the heartless woman to return. However, Yun Xiao said that Yun Luofeng would be angry when he came back at night. Father, do you think that it's a waste for her to eat the pastries and want her to spit them out? But now that you're forcing her to eat them, isn't it the same as letting her taste the pastries? Xiao Imo was speechless. Yun Xiao thought for a moment and said, Take her out and let her vomit outside. That way, your mother won't be angry. At this moment, Xiao Imo pitied Yao Mingqi. After offending Yun Xiao, her fate was destined to be miserable. Yun Xiao looked coldly at Yao Mingqi, who was trying to get up. He lifted his leg and stepped on her head, forcing her to lick the vomit clean. Even though it was Yao Mingqi's own vomit, she felt her stomach churn. It was extremely disgusting. Father, after she finishes vomiting, should we kill her? Xiao Imo made a throat-slitting gesture as his eyes flashed coldly. It was as if killing was as easy as eating to him. Her blood will dirty the courtyard, and your mother won't like it. Yun Xiao frowned. So, we'll cut off the tendons in her arms and legs and throw her out.
All right.
Xiao Imo agreed. Since her legs will sneak into other people's homes and her hands will steal other people's belongings, there's no need to keep her. Why not just cripple her? The conversation between the two made Yao Mingqi's heart grow colder. She had seen many men in her life, but this was the first time she had seen such a cruel and heartless man. No, I don't want it. Please let me go. Yao Mingqi cried miserably. Her voice was very sorrowful and pitiful. If she had merely snuck in, Yun Xiao would not have been so cruel. But what could he do? First, she had secretly eaten his pastries, and now, she was delusional about him. Just based on this point, it was impossible for him to let her go. Yun Xiao did not even look at Yao Mingqi as he grabbed her by the collar and dragged her out of the house. No matter how much the other party cried and screamed, his expression did not change in the slightest. He had promised her, as long as there were any peach blossoms, he would break them and not leave a single one behind. First, Yun Luofeng's strength stirred up a storm in the entire academy. Then, another violent hurricane swept over. It was said that Yao Mingqi, the 9th disciple on the heaven list, had her hands and feet broken by someone outside and had already become a cripple. When he found out about this, Yao Mingqi's master flew into a rage. He swore to find the person who crippled his disciple. But in the face of her master's questioning, Yao Mingqi seemed to be stunned. She stared blankly at the roof beam, her eyes lifeless. However, just as everyone was in a state of shock, another piece of news came out. It was said that Yao Mingqi's hands and feet were not clean. She had sneaked into someone's house and stolen their belongings, which resulted in her hands and feet being crippled. As for the person who had crippled her, it was not widely known. Chapter 1236. Go and investigate. Investigate immediately. I want to know who dared to touch my disciple. In the study room, Yao Shu angrily slammed his palm on the table and shouted angrily, "Anyone who hurts my disciple, I will make them die a horrible death." Other than being his disciple, Yao Mingqi was also his illegitimate daughter. Because there was a tigress at home, he had arranged for Yao Mingqi and her daughter to stay outside. It was also because of this that he felt so indebted to Yao Mingqi. Elder. The people below looked at Yao Shu carefully and said, "Everyone in the world is saying that Mrs. Hands and feet are not clean. That's why she was crippled." Bullshit. My disciple was pampered and had everything she wanted. Why would she need to steal other people's belongings? Yao Shu's eyes were spitting fire. Someone must be framing us. You must get to the bottom of this. Yes, Elder. Everyone cupped their fists and replied respectfully. At this moment, an old man beside Yao Shu pondered for a moment, then asked, "Elder Yao Shu, do you think this matter was done by Su Kong and the others? After all, the headmaster has always been elusive. I haven't seen him for many years. Now that the Western Continent Academy has returned to the two great sects, our two great sects have been fighting endlessly. I think that Su Kong and the others are the biggest suspects." A ruthless light flashed across Yao Shu's eyes. "If I find out that it was Su Kong and the others who hurt my daughter, I will definitely make them die a horrible death." In front of these people, he no longer called Yao Mingqi his disciple, but instead called her his daughter. Other than a few people, many people in the outside world did not know about the relationship between him and Yao Mingqi. I don't think that's possible. Another old man was silent for a moment. No matter how much Su Kong and the others fight with us, they wouldn't do such a thing that would provoke public anger. Humph. Yao Shu coldly snorted. What's impossible? You don't know a person's face. Out of the 10 people on the heaven list, 6 of them are in our hands, and they only control 4 people. Therefore, they must want to eliminate some of our disciples. Furthermore, Mingqi is my daughter, so of course she became their first target of revenge. Yao Shu gnashed his teeth in hatred. He was even more certain that other than the few people in the void, no one else would have the strength and courage to do such a cruel thing. Not only did they cripple her daughter, they even slandered her for having dirty hands and feet. Why would her own daughter covet the money of others? Compared to the West Continent Academy, which was in constant turmoil, Yun Luofeng was not affected in the slightest. At this moment, she was holding a dual invitation in her hand. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the delicately crafted dual invitation seriously. I knew it. It's definitely over. And Zaheo stood beside Yun Luofeng and muttered, "Of all the people you could have challenged, why did you challenge Hu Lin? Senior brother, Hu Li has issued a challenge to you. If you agree to it, you'll surely suffer his revenge, and if you don't, you'll be viewed as a coward." Why should I agree? Yun Luofeng casually threw the letter of challenge away. His lips curled into a smile. I have no interest in accepting the challenge. The reason he challenged the disciples on the Earth ranking was so that he could stay in the academy. Since she could stay, why should she continue to fight? But if you don't accept the challenge, Hu Li will come looking for trouble with you. And Zaheo was deeply worried. No matter what, he did not want Yun Luofeng to be in any danger. Chapter 1237. I don't want to accept the challenge, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid of him. Yun Luofeng stretched lazily. You can go back first. I'm going to start cultivating.
All right.
And Zaheo stood up helplessly. Miss, let's go. Little Loli blinked her eyes and held in Zaheo's hand as they walked out of the room. The moment the door closed, little Loli turned to look at Zaheo. Brother Zaheo, you're too wordy. I think she knows what she's doing. Miss, that's a genius on the heaven list. Do you think Miss Yun can handle him? And Zaheo sighed. He frowned and became even more worried. Little Loli turned to look at Yun Luofeng's closed door. Her large eyes shone brightly. I have confidence in her. Even little Loli herself didn't know where this confidence came from. However, she knew that Yun Luofeng wouldn't be at a disadvantage. and Zaheo grew increasingly worried. However, he was too weak and couldn't do anything, let alone help Yun Luofeng. I'm hungry, brother Zaheo. Little Loli was afraid that Zaheo would continue chattering and hurriedly change the topic. She blinked her large, watery eyes as she spoke. Seeing little Loli's gaze, and Zaheo's heart melted. He hurriedly said, "Miss, I'll take you to eat now."
All right.
The little Loli smiled. Her smile was innocent and pure. It was as bright as the sun, shining into the dark hearts of those people. You said that Yun Luofeng rejected the challenge? Inside the exquisite and luxurious room, Huli heard the person's report. His pair of fox-like eyes narrowed. Since she rejected my challenge, then I'll personally go meet this girl. Yes, brother Huli. After this person finished speaking, Huli had already stood up. He walked out of the room and headed in Yun Luofeng's direction. Yun Luofeng had just entered a state of cultivation when she heard footsteps coming from outside the room. She suddenly opened her eyes. At the same time, the room's door was pushed open. The moment she saw the man, only one word appeared in her mind. A stunner. That's right. No matter what word was used to describe a man, it was not as fitting as the word stunner. Yun Luofeng? The man raised his eyebrows and stared at Yun Luofeng, who was sitting cross-legged. A cunning light flashed in his eyes. Huli? Yun Luofeng looked at the man and asked calmly. I like your expression very much. Huli narrowed her eyes slightly. I just don't know if I like your strength as well. Yun Luofeng paused. Whether or not I can make you like me, what does that have to do with me? If there's nothing else, don't disturb my cultivation. I want to fight you. Huli drew his sword and pointed it at Yun Luofeng. At this moment, there were already many disciples surrounding the room. When they saw Huli coming to cause trouble for Yun Luofeng, their eyes flashed with interest. I'm busy. However, in the face of Huli's arrogance, Yun Luofeng merely replied with a single word. What if I insist on fighting you? Huli's eyes flashed with a dangerous glint as she raised the corners of her lips and asked. Yun Luofeng closed his eyes and no longer paid any attention to this annoying man. However, the colder Yun Luofeng's attitude towards him, the more excited he became. Yun Luofeng, fight me. If you win, you can set any conditions you want, Huli said excitedly. If I win, I want you to be my subordinate for 3 years and wait for my orders. Chapter 1238. Yun Luofeng slowly opened his eyes, and his devilish gaze landed on Huli. You really want to fight me? That's right. Huli raised his chin. If you don't agree today, I will pester you until you do. All right. Yun Luofeng pondered for a moment. If I win, I also want you to be loyal to me for 3 years. How about it? Huli was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly burst into laughter. Interesting. This is really interesting. All right, I promise you. As long as you can beat me, forget about being your subordinate for 3 years. What's wrong with 10 years? All right, Yun Luofeng replied. Don't forget what you said. If I win, you will be loyal to me for 10 years. Huli's laughter was suddenly blocked in his chest, choking him until he could not help but cough. His handsome face turned red. This woman really knew how to climb up a pole. He had only casually said it, and 3 years had become 10 years? But who asked him to bring it up? He could only grit his teeth and swallow it down. All right, 10 years it is. Huli gritted his teeth and said, Then when do we start fighting? Now. After the storm caused by Yao Mingqi, another storm swept through the academy. The genius Huli, who was ranked 10th on the heaven list, was actually going to fight with a new student. Especially the bet between the two, whoever lost would have to be loyal to the other. This was simply unheard of. Of course, many of the academy's disciples thought that Huli was bullying Yun Luofeng. After all, with Yun Luofeng's strength as a saint spirit, it was impossible for him to be Huli's match. The martial arts arena was a boiling cauldron of voices, and the inside and outside were filled with people. On the stage of the martial arts arena, a young girl dressed in snow-white clothes exuded an evil aura. Her fine black hair fluttered without any wind, and she was peerlessly moving. In front of the young girl was a man of peerless elegance. The man's fox-like eyes contained a cunning light, and a smile appeared on his jade-like face. His eyes were filled with interest, as if Yun Luofeng, who was in front of him, was an interesting plaything. Senior brother, Hu Li is very strong. This woman will definitely lose miserably. In the academy, senior brother Hu Li's beauty is obvious to all, and his strength is extraordinary. If I can marry such a man, I can die without regrets. The women's eyes were filled with red hearts as they stared unblinkingly at the man's perfect face. If they could become a woman by Hu Li's side, they would wake up laughing even in their dreams. Yun Luofeng. Hu Li raised his eyebrows and looked down at the young girl standing in front of him. Remember our bet. If I win, you will serve me for 3 years. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. I'm afraid you won't have that chance.
Boom.
At this moment, both of their auras surged out at the same time, creating quite a storm in the arena. Haha. Hu Li laughed maniacally, his black hair dancing in the wind. Yun Luofeng, do you believe me when I say that the winner of this battle will definitely be me? One was a strong cultivator who had already broken through to become a Saint King, while the other was a high-level Holy Spirit. Their strength could not be compared at all. Therefore, not only did Hu Li have such confidence, even the others felt that it was impossible for Yun Luofeng to win this battle. Yun Luofeng's eyes gradually became more serious. The difference between a Holy Spirit and a Saint King was not just a difference in level, but a difference in quality. However, she would not lose no matter what. Chapter 1239. Yun Luofeng, take out your weapons. Hu Li looked at the empty-handed Yun Luofeng, and the corners of his lips curled up. I never fight with empty-handed people. Yun Luofeng did not hesitate and took out his sword from his spatial ring and held it tightly in his hand. Your ruffians what? Hu Li asked in surprise as he glanced at Yun Luofeng's left hand. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. My left hand is enough to deal with you. The young girl's voice was extremely arrogant, but it also angered Hu Li. His long and narrow eyes were tinged with a mocking smile. Then don't blame me for not giving you a chance. As soon as he finished speaking, Hu Li's body leaped and shot towards Yun Luofeng like a bolt of lightning. It's over. Below the arena, and Zehao hurriedly covered his eyes, not daring to look at this cruel scene. No matter how strong Yun Luofeng was, he could not possibly be Hu Li's opponent. So, the ending was within everyone's expectations. Although senior brother Hu Li is ranked 10th on the Sky list, his speed is the fastest out of everyone here. Even the top few on the Heaven list would need to expend some effort to fight him. With just this speed, senior Hu Li can fight with a middle-stage Saint King. Even a middle-stage Saint King cannot escape from his attack, let alone Yun Luofeng. The crowd discussed animatedly as they looked at Yun Luofeng with sympathy. However, facing Hu Li who was about to enter her, Yun Luofeng slowly closed her eyes. Everyone thought that she had been scared silly and did not even have the courage to look at Hu Li, let alone resist. No one knew that the current Yun Luofeng had become a world of her own. Back then, the scenes in the celestial spirit mirror flashed through her mind in a flash, causing her to become extremely calm. It was so calm that only the sound of the wind could be heard. What is she doing? In the arena, on the viewing platform, Mu Ran lowered his head in surprise and looked at Yun Luofeng, whose eyes were lightly closed. His eyes were filled with doubt. Ji Yen, the hall master of the beast-taming hall, fell silent. After a while, he said, if Hu Li wants to compete on the Heaven list with his speed, even the 5th place might not be able to defeat him. Even if the opponent is stronger than him, to be honest, even I might not be able to capture all of Hu Li's movements. Because Hu Li did not want to compete on the Heaven list, after he reached the 10th place, there was no more movement. If I'm not wrong. Ji Yen paused and continued. She gave up on observing Hu Li's movements with her eyes and chose to use her ears to distinguish sounds. Mu Li's ears to distinguish sounds in a battle? He could not do such a dangerous thing. One had to admit that Yun Luofeng, this girl's guts were not small. Miran, is this the little girl that Chen Yuqing recommended to you? Ji said. Ji Yan, Luo out. Ji Li. Yen Ji Ji's Ji Li Yun Luo, of who Ji said Li Ji of Yun Luofeng's attainments as a spiritualist are so high. Don't join in the fun. Mu ran. So, what if I'm the hall master of the beast taming hall? Who set the rule that only beast taming disciples can exist in the beast taming hall? Anyway, I've taken a fancy to this girl. How about you trade a flame bloodline for her? I won't trade. Mu ran scoffed. Even if you trade a dragon and a phoenix for her, I won't trade. She's a good seedling. If you train her well, she'll be more precious than any treasure. Chapter 1240. Ji Yan pursed his lips, feeling very regretful in his heart. Why did this kind of seedling choose to go to a Spirit Masters Academy? And the outstanding disciples that the Spirit Masters Academy nurtured were all provided for the morning hall. Pity, truly a pity. Such a genius had missed him by a hair's breadth.
Wind.
The whistling sound grew louder and louder. Hu Li's expression was originally one of disapproval, but when she saw that Yun Luofeng had dodged her attack, shock flashed across her beautiful face. The surrounding crowd was stunned as well. They thought that Yun Luofeng would definitely be defeated in one move, but she'd actually dodged it? Their eyes must be playing tricks on them. How could Yun Luofeng have dodged Hu Li's attack? Everyone hurriedly rubbed their eyes and forced them open, but all they saw was the completely unharmed girl in white standing on the stage. This time, the girl simply tore off a piece of her sleeve and tied it over her eyes. The corners of her lips curled into an evil smile. That's enough. Let's continue. Those 3 months of training in the sky spirit realm weren't completely useless to her. For the people of the world, their eyes were extremely important. If they couldn't see the battle clearly, they would inevitably return in defeat. But for her, her eyes had already become a burden at this moment. It was very easy for the eyes to be confused by the scenery of the outside world, and what they saw might not be true. However, the ears would always be able to distinguish the true direction. Yun Luofeng. Hu Li narrowed her fox eyes slightly, and her smile was very sinister and cunning. You're different from anyone I've ever met. And the more you're like this, the more I want you to become my follower. After saying these words, Hu Li moved again. His figure was still as fast as lightning, and there were rows of afterimages following behind him. Yun Luofeng felt the whistling sound of the wind and leaned to the side, narrowly dodging Hu Li's attack. At the same time, the sword in her hand descended from the sky and chopped downwards.
Boom.
The stage was instantly chopped into two, and dust filled the air. Yun Luofeng quickly flashed behind Hu Li, and his long sword chopped downwards again. Hu Li sensed the threat behind him and turned around, using his sword to block the long sword.
Bang.
The shockwaves spread out from the two of them. It was so strong that the disciples near the arena were sent flying, falling to the ground in a sorry state. Yun Luofeng took 2 steps back, and a mouthful of blood came from her throat. She forcefully swallowed it down, and the smile on her lips contained a trace of coldness. Even if she had broken through Hu Li's speed, there was still a huge gap between the two of them. If this continued, she would definitely not be Hu Li's opponent. Similarly, Hu Li also took 2 steps back in the face of the storm. He shook his somewhat numb arm and narrowed his fox-like eyes. His gaze gradually turned solemn. It looked like he had underestimated this girl. Her strength was definitely not just that of a high-level holy spirit. On the viewing platform, Muran gazed at the 2 people below, and his brows knit together lightly. Ji Yan, who do you think will win between these two? Ji Yan went silent, and then he shook his head. If it was before the competition, I would definitely say it's a fool. There's no suspense between a saint king and a saint spirit. But now I notice that I'm slightly unable to see through it. Thinking of this, Ji Yan laughed self-deprecatingly. He had lived for so many years, yet he was unable to distinguish between a saint spirit and a saint king. If word of this got out, many old fellows would probably laugh at him. The battle between the two of them attracted many onlookers. Chapter 1241. Wang Yizhi and his nephew were also standing in the crowd, glaring at Yun Luofeng viciously. This damned girl dared to attack me, and now she has offended Hu Li. Her good days are over. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth in hatred. He had thought that Yun Luofeng would be expelled from the steward's hall according to the school rules for beating up his uncle. Who would have thought that the hall master of the morning hall would actually defend a woman like Yun Luofeng? He even suggested that she would be exempted from punishment if she entered the earth roll within 5 days. He did not think much of it at first. Entering the earth roll within 5 days? How was that possible? A new student could never do that. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Yun Luofeng challenged a genius on the earth roll in a single day and even defeated him. Moreover, her strength as a holy spirit was revealed to everyone. So what? Yun Luofeng could have challenged anyone, but she chose Hu Lin. Who didn't know that Hu Lin had a younger brother on the heaven roll? Just as he had expected, Hu Li immediately came to cause trouble for Yun Luofeng after finding out that her brother had matured. Ha ha ha. Wang Mujing could imagine Yun Luofeng's miserable ending and could not help but laugh out loud. His laughter was sinister and cruel. Yun Luofeng, you have to pay the price for being too arrogant. In the crowd, apart from Wang Yizhi and Zhehao, there was also an old man who was looking at Yun Luofeng anxiously. This old man was none other than the old man who had been in charge of the registration and had introduced Yun Luofeng to the other elders. An elder's disciple is in conflict with Hu Li. Logically speaking, I should go and tell the other elders, but the elders have recently been overwhelmed by a matter. If I let them worry about this matter, I'm afraid it will affect the progress of that matter. The old man wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Forget it, I'll take a look at the situation first. If Miss Yun is really in danger, I'll inform the elders in time. This disciple of the elders was really good at stirring up trouble. First, she beat up Wang Yizhi. Then she challenged a genius on the earth roll, causing a commotion. Now, she even accepted Hu Li's challenge. However, the old man did not expect Yun Luofeng to be a holy spirit. She really hid her strength well. The old man smiled helplessly. He didn't know what kind of uproar it would cause if the elders found out about this.
Boom.
On the arena, a storm was brewing. Yun Luofeng took another 2 steps back. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stared at Hu Li with her deep black eyes. Hu Li was not as peerless as he had been before. He appeared to be in a rather sorry state, and his expression was one of extreme fury. Yun Luofeng, are you a holy spirit or not? How could a holy spirit unleash such power? And Zhehao was dumbfounded. He did not expect that Yun Luofeng would force Hu Li to such an extent. Hee. Suddenly, Hu Li laughed coldly. He propped himself up on the arena, and the aura around his body grew stronger and stronger. A storm spread out from his body, and it was so powerful that it made people feel extremely oppressed. Yun Luofeng, I have indeed underestimated you in the beginning.
Now,
I want to know if you will be able to receive this attack of mine. Not good. Mu Ran was shocked when he saw Hu Li's actions. Quick, stop him. Otherwise, the Yun girl will definitely not be able to withstand this attack. At the very least, she will be crippled. As soon as he finished speaking, his body shot towards Hu Li and Yun Luofeng like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 1242. The surrounding crowd could feel the surging power from Hu Li's body. They were so suppressed that they couldn't even utter a word. They could only stare dumbfounded at the 2 people in the arena. Mu Ran's expression became increasingly anxious. Unfortunately, it was too late. Just as he was about to reach Hu Li, Hu Li's power exploded and swept towards Yun Luofeng like a hurricane.
Boom.
A strong explosion resounded throughout the entire arena, so much so that the arena was blown into a pile of ruins. Muran stopped in his tracks and stared in shock at the dust rising from the arena. A raging flame rose from his body and his bloodshot eyes turned towards Huli. Huli, do you know how to control your strength? This little girl is someone I've taken a fancy to. How dare you kill her?
Huli was also dumbfounded.
He had thought that Yun Luofeng would be able to escape this calamity. Who would have thought that she would not be able to escape? How could this be? His original intention was not to kill this woman. He just did not want to lose to her. Miss Yun. And Zeheo cried out anxiously. 2 streams of tears flowed from the corners of his eyes. Miss, it's all our fault. We've dragged her down. In the beginning, if they hadn't offended Wang Mujing, Yun Luofeng wouldn't have become enemies with Wang Mujing. Wang Yiji wouldn't have made things difficult for her, and she wouldn't have beaten Wang Yiji up in public. In this way, the following incident would not have happened. For a moment, feelings of self-blame and guilt filled in Zeheo's heart, causing it to tremble.
Ha ha ha.
Wang Mujing laughed maniacally. His laughter was filled with madness. She's dead. She's finally dead. This woman has offended me. She won't have a good ending. When Zeheo heard Wang Mujing's laughter, his eyes became like a jackal's and a leopard's as he turned angrily towards Wang Mujing. Shut up. Wang Mujing sneered. Little trash, who are you yelling at? Without Yun Luofeng to support you, you're just a bunch of good-for-nothings.
Ha ha ha.
These words caused Zeheo's suppressed emotions to explode in an instant. He pounced towards Wang Mujing furiously and bit him on the shoulder. Ah! Wang Mujing screamed. Quick, help me chase this little bastard down. In an instant, the surrounding people rushed over to pull Zeheo away from Wang Mujing. However, Zeheo bit Wang Mujing's shoulder tightly and refused to let go. Little bastard. Wang Yiji's eyes turned cold, and he slapped his palm on Zeheo's shoulder. In an instant, Zeheo's body flew out like a kite with a broken string and crashed heavily into the crowd. At the same time, he tore off a piece of flesh from Wang Mujing's shoulder, and blood kept flowing. Beat him. Beat this little bastard to death. Due to his relationship with Wang Yiji, Wang Mujing was often followed by a group of followers. Now that they heard the angry words, those followers quickly rushed forward and punched and kicked Zeheo, who was lying on the ground. Zeheo was in so much pain that he curled up into a ball, refusing to make a sound no matter what. Brother Zeheo. Tears welled up in the little Loli's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She pushed through the crowd, wanting to rush in front of Zeheo. Unexpectedly, a foot reached out from the side and tripped her. Little thing, you'd better behave yourself. Wang Mujing pressed on his bleeding shoulder and walked to the little Loli. He lifted her up and smiled sinisterly. Zeheo is definitely going to die. Yun Luofeng is also dead. You'd better come with me. Chapter 1243. The little girl's face was filled with stubbornness. Her bright eyes were filled with resentment as she glared at Wang Mujing. You still dare to be stubborn.
Slap.
Wang Mujing raised his hand and slapped the little girl's face. In an instant, a blood-red mark appeared on the little girl's pink cheek. Even so, the little girl did not cry. Her bright eyes were fixed on Wang Mujing without fear. Young mistress. Zeheo's heart ached. His hands clenched into fists as he felt powerless. He had caused Yun Luofeng's death. He was unable to protect young mistress. What was the point of a useless person like him living? At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the arena. No one paid any attention to Zeheo and the little girl. Even if they had paid attention, they would not have helped them in the arena. Smoke and dust scattered in all directions. Huli stared blankly at the ruins of the arena in front of him. He still could not believe that he had really killed that young girl. However, at this moment, the smoke and dust that had covered everyone's eyes gradually dissipated, revealing the scene above the ruins. They saw a beautiful young girl standing above the ruins. Her white robes were stained with dust, and part of her sleeve had been torn off. The young girl's arm was bleeding, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Her originally fair face was now somewhat dirty. The white cloth covering her eyes had also fallen off and floated in the breeze in an instant. The crowd quietened down. Wang Mujing's maniacal laughter came to an abrupt halt. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief and stared in shock at the young girl standing above the ruins. She's not dead? This woman who should have died was actually still alive? Wang Mujing gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with intense hatred as he stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. If looks could kill, Yun Luofeng's body would have been riddled with holes. So, you're still alive. Hu Li's heart finally calmed down. I knew that this move of mine would not be able to kill you. Yun Luofeng, you're very strong. I concede defeat. Admitted defeat? The crowd's eyes widened in shock. Hu Li, who was ranked 10th on the heaven list, admitted defeat? Remember your promise. Serve me loyally, for 10 years. Yun Luofeng wiped away the blood at the corner of her mouth. Her gaze slowly swept downwards, and she saw Zhao, who was surrounded and beaten up by those people, and the little loli, who had a clear 5-fingered mark on her face. Wang Mujing grabbed the little loli's body and took a few steps back. Yun Luofeng, don't come over. If you come over, I'll kill her. Yun Luofeng acted as though he hadn't heard Wang Mujing's words and continued walking towards him. I'm not joking with you. If you dare to take another step forward, I will really kill her. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth. He saw that Yun Luofeng did not show any signs of stopping. He instantly took out a dagger and placed it on the little loli's neck.
Miss.
And Zhao's heart almost skipped a beat. His eyes were filled with anger and anxiety. Wang Mujing, stop. If you dare to touch Miss, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. The little loli didn't have much of a reaction. She blinked her bright eyes and looked at Yun Luofeng without blinking. She was fine, that's great. If something really happened to her, Brother Zhao and I would definitely regret it for the rest of our lives. Yun Luofeng, you forced me to do this. Chapter 1244. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth fiercely. He knew that Yun Luofeng would not let him go. Since that was the case, he would make the first move. Thinking of this, he raised the dagger in his hand and stabbed it fiercely towards the little girl's chest. Just as the dagger was about to stab into her chest, a strong pressure came from the front, causing his fingers to stiffen. The dagger could no longer move forward. Instantly, his eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Yun Luofeng with a pale face. At this moment, Yun Luofeng had already walked in front of the little girl. His slender fingers gently stroked her delicate face as he lowered his gaze and asked, "Does it hurt?" The little girl shook her head and said in a childish voice, "It doesn't hurt. Compared to Brother Zhao, it doesn't hurt." "Do you want to kill him?" Yun Luofeng continued to ask. The little girl was stunned. She looked at the pale Wang Mujing behind her and nodded. "Yes, they bullied Brother Zhao. I want to kill them." Her voice was still immature, but it was filled with determination. "All right, I'll give you the sword. Go kill them." Yun Luofeng handed the sword in his hand to the little girl. "Remember, don't show mercy to those who bully you." The little girl's hand trembled as she took the sword from Yun Luofeng's hand. She turned around and stabbed the tip of the sword towards Wang Mujing's chest. "Jing-er!" Wang Yizhi shouted angrily. "Yun Luofeng, you will get what you deserve. You will definitely get what you deserve." Pfft! As soon as Wang Yizhi finished speaking, the little girl's sword had already pierced Wang Mujing's chest. At this moment, she felt refreshed all over. It was something she had never felt before. So, killing an enemy would give her such a thrill. Wang Mujing's eyes widened as his body gradually fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with fear. Just now, he had wanted to dodge, but under Yun Luofeng's pressure, he couldn't even move a finger. He could only watch as the sword, which emitted a cold light, entered his chest. Everyone in the arena was dumbfounded. No one had expected Yun Luofeng to actually dare to kill someone on the spot. Those who are kind will be bullied by others. Yun Luofeng acted as if he did not see those people's shocked gazes. He lowered his gaze and said, If you don't want to be bullied by others, you have to become strong. Kind people get bullied. The little girl nodded her head sensibly. From now on, I won't be bullied anymore. I have to protect myself and Brother Zaheo. And Zaheo was only her bodyguard, but he had accompanied her for many years. In her heart, he was already like family. Hearing the little Loli's tender voice, and Zaheo's emotions became somewhat complicated. In his heart, his young miss had always been naive and innocent. He would never let her worry about her livelihood, let alone let her come into contact with the evils of the human heart. No matter how hard and tired he was, he would not let her suffer in the slightest. Now that he thought about it, was his way of thinking all along wrong? What if one day he left the young miss forever? How would the young miss, who had no ability to survive on the mainland? Sigh. Mu Ran smiled bitterly. This girl's temper is as fierce as what Qin Yuqing said. She is not willing to suffer any losses. But now, she's actually teaching a little girl how to kill people. Hee, Ji Yan said with some schadenfreude. Mu Ran, I won't fight with you over this girl. With her personality, she will definitely attract a lot of trouble. It's better for you to follow behind her and clean up. Oh, that's right. You have to help her solve the current situation first. Chapter 1245. Just as he finished speaking, a stern voice rang out from outside the noisy crowd. Get out of the way. Everyone get out of the way. After hearing this voice, everyone subconsciously opened up a path, allowing the armored people behind them to pass. Among those people, the leader was a middle-aged man with a serious expression. He slowly walked in front of Yun Luofeng and said expressionlessly, Yun Luofeng, you are extremely audacious. You dare to kill someone in public. Immediately, we will go to the penal court to be punished.
Wait.
Huli leaped and landed in front of Yun Luofeng when she saw that the people were about to take Yun Luofeng away. Yun Luofeng has already entered the Heaven List and is a disciple of the Heaven List. How dare the Steward's Hall capture her? Once she entered the Heaven List, her status would change greatly. Even the Steward's Hall leader would not be able to touch her. Lord Tianyu, you have to uphold justice for my nephew. Wang Yizhi reacted and quickly rushed to Meng Tianyu's feet. He said tearfully, my nephew died unjustly. You have to uphold justice for us. Meng Tianyu's eyes darkened and he sneered at Yun Luofeng. So, what if she defeated you? The Steward's Hall has the right to take her back. Even if we don't have the right to punish her, we can hand her over to the elders. Are you trying to say that a disciple of the Heaven List has more power than an elder? Furthermore, our academy has not recognized her as a disciple of the Heaven List. This meant that the academy had not recognized her, and she was not a disciple of the Heaven List. The Steward's Hall had the right to take her back. Huli narrowed her eyes and sneered as she stood in front of Yun Luofeng. It doesn't matter if you don't recognize her. I've been in the Heaven List for 3 to 5 years. I don't know if I have the right to make you go back based on my status. Meng Tianyu's eyes darkened. Huli, do you really want to make an enemy of the Steward Hall? Make an enemy? Huli smiled and said sarcastically, are you even worthy? In an instant, Meng Tianyu's expression changed. Just as he was about to speak, Mu Ran was already standing next to Yun Luofeng. Meng Tianyu, this Yun Luofeng is already a member of our morning hall. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for your Steward's Hall to capture a disciple of our morning hall. Mu Ran wore a faint smile on her face as she looked at Meng Tianyu with an indifferent gaze. Meng Tianyu's face darkened once more. Not only did Huli protect a mere Yun Luofeng, but even the hall master of the morning hall was biased towards her. Huli, Hall Master Mu Ran, I will go back and report to our hall master. Then he will make a decision. Let's go. Meng Tianyu waved his hand and led a group of people from the Steward's Hall away. After Mu Ran saw Meng Tianyu leave, he retracted his gaze and smiled bitterly at Yun Luofeng. Did you really have to kill him on the spot? Can't you just bear with it? No. Yun Luofeng's words silenced Mu Ran. He shook his head helplessly, and the smile on his face became even more bitter. Moreover, he was the one who attacked first, threatening me with Aurelia's life. Arale? This name is really strange. Mu Ran was stunned for a moment, and his face was filled with speechlessness. The little Loli was also stunned. She weakly explained, "My name is not Arale. My name is Jifei. And Zaheo, take her back first, and let her recuperate from her injuries. Leave the rest to me." Yun Luofeng glanced at the little Loli, then turned to Nzaheo and spoke. Nzaheo crawled up from the ground, his face filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Miss Yun. We've dragged you down again." Chapter 1246. Brother Zaheo, let's go. The little girl pursed her lips slightly and looked at Yun Luofeng with her big bright eyes. "I will remember your words. In the future, I will not continue to be so weak." She looked at Yun Luofeng one last time, turned around and supported Nzaheo as they walked out, gradually disappearing from her sight. "Do you need any help?" Muran looked at Yun Luofeng and asked with a bitter smile. "No need." Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin as a dangerous light flashed across his slightly narrowed eyes. "I can handle it myself." The elders in the academy were divided into two factions. Similarly, the elders' office was also divided into the east and the west. The elders' office, where Su Kong and the others were, was in the east. At this moment, a panicked figure appeared outside the elders' office. When he saw the people guarding the door, he ran over and said while panting, Quickly inform the elders, something has happened. Steward Jean, the elders are busy and have given the order that they will not see anyone who comes to disturb them." The guard at the door frowned slightly and refused the old man's request. The old man wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Hurry up and inform the elders. Otherwise, it will really be too late. Tell the elders that something has happened to Miss Yun." When the guard saw the old man's panicked look, he thought for a moment and said, "I will inform the elders, but whether they are willing to see you or not is not something I can decide." The atmosphere in the elders' office was very strict. Many elders sat upright, their faces filled with helplessness and worry. "The people from the Continent Lord's mansion have just given the order for everyone above the Holy Spirit stage to encircle and kill the Ghost Emperor." Su Kong rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. It is said that those who had gone before were all killed by the Ghost Emperor. Ling Hai's expression was very ugly. "We have been busy with that matter recently, yet there are still people who think that we are not free enough. Furthermore, we do not even know the Ghost Emperor's strength, and yet we are sending ourselves to their doorstep. Isn't that courting death?" Those old fellows in the West Elder Hall have already agreed. Now only we are left. Void. I think it's best if we don't get involved in this mess. Shuang frowned slightly as she tapped her finger on the table. After all, this Ghost Emperor managed to escape from the pursuit of so many people. He even grew to his current state. His fear is definitely beyond imagination. It would be great if the headmaster came back. Unfortunately, the headmaster has been gone for so many years, and there is still no news of his whereabouts. The expressions of the elders grew more and more worried. During the time that the headmaster wasn't around, there wasn't even a person in charge. Elders. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the door, causing Su Kong and the others to frown. "Didn't you say that you're not allowed to disturb us if there's nothing wrong? Who allowed you to come in?" Su Kong's face darkened as he scolded sternly. A layer of cold sweat appeared on the guard's forehead. "Elders, Butler Jean is here to seek an audience. He said that Miss Yun is in danger."
What?
With a loud bang, Ling Hai smashed his fist on the table. He stood up angrily. "My precious disciple is in danger? Who has the guts to lay a hand on my disciple? Let Manager Jean in immediately." "Yes, sir." After he finished speaking, the guard retreated. Not long after, the old man hurriedly rushed in from the door. In an instant, the gazes of the 5 elders all landed on the old man. Chapter 1247. What happened? Su Kong's expression darkened. What danger did Feng encounter? The old man looked at the 5 elders carefully. Elders, Miss Yun returned not long ago. However, Wang Yizhi deliberately made things difficult for Miss Yun in order to avenge his nephew. Wang Yizhi? That bastard again? Ling Hai's eyes were filled with anger. Why did Wang Yizhi have the chance to cause trouble for my precious disciple? Didn't I arrange for Wang Yizhi to go somewhere else? The old man wiped his sweat and continued, I don't know what happened either. The hall that Wang Yizhi brought is where Miss Yun is. He is certain that Miss Yun did not apply for leave and wants to expel her from the academy. If Miss Yun does not want to leave, she must endure 100 lashes from him. Ling Hai clenched his fists tightly as he gritted his teeth. Wang Yizhi, who gave him the guts to hit my disciple? Shui Ying and the others stood up anxiously. How is Miss Yun? Did Wang Yizhi injure her? Wang Yizhi injured Yun Luofeng? The old man laughed bitterly when he heard this. Yun Luofeng was a holy spirit practitioner. How could Wang Yizhi possibly injure her? Elders, don't worry. Miss Yun is not injured. Instead, she injured Wang Yizhi. Hearing this, Shui Ying heaved a sigh of relief. She rubbed her chest and slowly exhaled. It's good that she's not injured. I was almost scared to death. Wang Yizhi, that bastard, is really audacious. I'll settle the score with him later. What's next? Su Kong continued to ask. Wang Yizhi reported Miss Yun to the steward's hall. The people from the steward's hall wanted to punish Miss Yun. It was Hall Master Mu Rand who spoke up for Miss Yun. However, the people from the steward's hall thought that Miss Yun was at fault. In the end, they came to an agreement. If Miss Yun can make it to the earth roll within 5 days, they'll let her go. What? Ling Hai, who had just sat down and had yet to take a sip of tea to calm himself down, slammed the table and stood up when he heard this. Make it to the earth roll within 5 days? My disciple is quite talented. Unfortunately, she hasn't started cultivating yet. Aren't they forcing her? By the way, you said my disciple injured Wang Yizhi? As far as I know, Wang Yizhi is a venerable spiritualist. How did my disciple injure him? The old man wiped his sweat again. Miss Yun has already made it to the earth roll. Puff. Su Kong had just taken a sip of tea when he spat it out because of these words. Emptiness, who was sitting opposite him, was more unlucky. He was sprayed all over his face, and his face was filled with resentment. Did you just say that the Yun girl has charged up the earth roll? Shui Ying was stunned as she asked in disbelief. The old man nodded. She made it to the earth roll, but the person she defeated was Hu Lin, the brother of the heaven rolls Hu Li. Su Kong narrowed his eyes. Did Hu Li take revenge for his brother and injure my disciple? He would never let off anyone who hurt his disciple. No. The old man shook his head and said, Hu Li challenged Miss Yun to a fight, but in the end, he admitted defeat. Admit defeat. The elders looked at each other, and the shock in their eyes deepened. Hu Li fought with Yun Luofeng but admitted defeat? Could it be that Yun Luofeng was stronger than Hu Li? Steward Jean, hurry up and tell us what happened. Shui Ying frowned and continued to ask. Chapter 1248. Who is it that dared to touch our disciple? A cold light flashed across Shui Ying's eyes, and her voice was extremely cold. Elder Shui Ying, Yun Luofeng has 2 friends in the academy. Wang Mujing thought that Yun Luofeng had died in Hu Li's hands, so she injured Yun Luofeng's friend. Yun Luofeng wanted to settle the score with Wang Mujing, but who knew that Wang Mujing would capture her friend and use her friend's life to threaten him? So, the old man didn't say anything else, but the 5 elders understood what had happened. Humph. Ling Hai scoffed. Wang Mujing was courting death. She can't blame anyone else. My disciple did not do anything wrong. Could it be that the people from the duty hall are going to settle the score with my disciple? That's right. The elder nodded. The people from the duty hall are going to pursue the matter. That's not right. Shui Ying frowned slightly. My disciple defeated Hu Li and was able to enter the heaven list. Why would the people from the duty hall have the guts to look for her? The elder looked at the elders carefully. The people from the duty hall said that the academy will not recognize Miss Yun's identity.
Ha ha ha.
Ling Hai laughed maniacally. Since when did the duty hall have the right to make decisions in the academy? How dare they bully my disciple? I will make them pay the price.
Boom.
Ling Hai punched the wall, creating a huge hole in it. Immediately after, his figure rushed out of the hole. Let's go too. Shui Ying's beautiful eyes darkened. After all, I'm not dead yet and someone dares to bully me. These people from the duty hall are too much. Just as the elder went to call for reinforcements, the people from the duty hall found Yun Luofeng again. This time it was the leader of the duty hall, Zhuo Wen. Perhaps it was because of Mu Ran and Hu Li, but they did not forcefully escort Yun Luofeng. Instead, they invited her over. When Hu Li and Mu Ran received the news, Yun Luofeng had already left with the people from the duty hall. At this moment, in the penal hall that was filled with torture devices, Zhuo Wen sat high up on a black wooden chair. His expression was stern as he looked at the young girl below and said in a cold voice, Yun Luofeng, do you know your crimes? The girl's demonic aura was awe-inspiring as a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Her body was languid and evil as she lifted her eyes to look at Zhuo Wen. Your steward's hall invited me here as a guest. Is this the attitude of a guest? Not even a chair? Zhuo Wen's eyes sank, and he said in a cold voice, Yun Luofeng, what kind of place do you take my duty hall to be? Let me tell you, today you can only live if I want you to live. If I want you to die, you must die. Yun Luofeng lazily raised the corner of his lips. How many gifts did Wang Yizhi give you? Zhuo Wen was stunned. His face was filled with anger as if someone had seen through him. He shouted, Yun Luofeng, my duty hall has always been impartial. Let alone the fact that you're not a disciple of the heavenly role. Even if you're in the heavenly role, as long as you make a mistake, I have the right to punish you. The academy was a place that focused on geniuses. Therefore, as long as one entered the heaven ranking, his authority would be higher than the hall masters of the various halls. But there was one exception, that was, the academy was not allowed to kill fellow students, even if they were geniuses on the heaven roll. If a genius on the heaven roll made a mistake, the duty hall also had the right to punish them. Someone, drag Yun Luofeng away and punish him severely with a branding iron. Yes. After Zhuo Wen's words fell, two people immediately stepped forward and tried to stop Yun Luofeng's body. However, before the two of them could touch Yun Luofeng, there was a bang. A wave of energy surged out of her body and forced the two of them back a few steps. Chapter 1249. Get lost. The girl's thin lips parted slightly, her evil eyes sweeping over the two people she had pushed back. Her beautiful face was cold. Yun Luofeng. Zhuo Wen stood up angrily. Did you think I invited you here just to be a guest? I just tricked you into coming to the criminal court. When you get here, you won't be able to call for help. No one can save you. Yun Luofeng raised her hand and pulled the iron torture chair to her side. She flicked her sleeves and sat down. She propped her head up with the back of her hand and looked at Zhuo Wen with a faint smile. Then, do you think you can punish me? Lazy, evil, cold, domineering, these four words could not be more suitable to describe the young girl today. Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed with anger. He slammed his palm on the table and stood up angrily. Yun Luofeng, I'll show you now if I can punish you. In an instant, the power in Zhuo Wen's body surged, and he quickly rushed towards Yun Luofeng.
Stop.
Mu Ran hurriedly rushed in from outside. When he saw Zhuo Wen attack Yun Luofeng, his old face immediately became furious. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed in front of Yun Luofeng, raising his hand to block Mu Ran's attack.
Boom.
The two palms collided, and Zhuo Wen took a few steps back. His expression darkened and became hazy. Mu Ran, I advise you to mind your own business. Ha ha. Mu Ran sneered and flicked his sleeves, standing in front of Yun Luofeng. Then, I'm really going to mind my own business. Zuowen sneered. So you're going to protect the woman who committed the murder? Although it was the little lowly who killed Wang Mujing, it was Yun Luofeng who ordered it. Wang Yizhi also put all the blame on Yun Luofeng. As for the little lowly, as long as Yun Luofeng was dead, wouldn't she be at his mercy? Zuowen, if Wang Mujing hadn't wanted to kill him first, he wouldn't have been killed. Everything has a cause and effect. Why do you put the blame on the Yun girl? Mu Ran flicked his sleeves, looking like a sage. In my opinion, let's just forget about this. The Yun girl didn't do anything wrong. Humph. Zuowen's eyes were gloomy. If I don't punish her, and word gets out, people will think that our West Continent Academy has no rules. A life for a life, no matter if she's on the heaven roll or earth roll. Since you said that a murderer should pay with his life, and Wang Mujing was the one who attacked first, is he not at fault? Mu Ran furrowed his brows and felt a little angry in his heart. You said Wang Mujing made the first move? Zuowen sneered. Then is she dead? She and that little girl didn't die, so what right does she have to kill Wang Mujing? Mu Ran took a deep breath. He decided not to waste any more words with Zuowen. He turned to look at Yun Luofeng. Yun girl, leave this place first. I'll take care of this for you. Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly and stood up lazily from her chair. Her lips curled into an angle as she looked at Zuowen with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Miran, he wants to kill you? Mu Ran was stunned and looked at Yun Luofeng in confusion. He wanted to kill Zuowen? What was going on? Since when did he want to kill him? Yun Luofeng continued to smile and said, he wanted to kill you a long time ago. You, Mu Ran. Zuowen flew into a rage and turned to Mu Ran angrily. You actually want to kill me? Then I'll kill you first. Let's see how you're going to kill me. Chapter 1250. Mu Ran was dumbfounded. Could he say that he was innocent? But Yun Luofeng did not give Mu Ran the chance to speak. She shrugged and continued, what you're doing is a little inhumane. Mu Ran only wanted to kill you. He didn't actually kill you. I think it's better for you to make peace. Yun Luofeng spoke with sincerity. No one could see any lies on her face. Make peace? Dream on. How could I give him a chance to kill me? Zuowen gritted his teeth. Mu Ran, you wanted to kill me. Even if the elders of the college stop me, I must kill you today. Yun Luofeng laughed. Her laughter was exceptionally clear in the quiet penal court. I was just joking just now, but... She paused, her eyes turning slightly. You also know that if someone wants to kill you, you have to strike first and not give them any chance to make a move. Why is it that when it comes to others, it changes? Zuowen's expression abruptly changed. Only now did he realize that Yun Luofeng had set a trap for him. Yun Luofeng! He roared and rushed towards Yun Luofeng again. Murderous intent surged from his body as if he wanted to kill the girl with one blow. Wang Yizhi appeared out of nowhere. His venomous eyes stared at Yun Luofeng, who was suffering from Zuowen's attack. There was a cold light in the corners of his eyes. Yun Luofeng, you killed my nephew. If I don't avenge him, I am not a man. Yun Luofeng looked coldly at Zuowen, who was closing in on her. Her expression did not change. Her beautiful face still had an evil smile. Stop.
Boom.
In an instant, an angry roar suddenly sounded. It was like a drumstick hitting Zuowen's chest. In an instant, his body was thrown into the air. Fresh blood flowed out of his mouth. He raised his terrified eyes and looked at the group of elders who were striding in from outside the door. His face turned from pale white to astonishment, and his eyes were filled with deep astonishment. Elder Su Kong, Elder Ling Hai, why are you here? Zuowen didn't know what was going on when he saw these people charging at him furiously. His mind buzzed, and he didn't understand how he had offended these elders. Ling Hai dashed forward and kicked Zuowen, who had just crawled up into the air. His face was very ugly, and his anger was overflowing. Zuowen, how dare you? who allowed you to set up a private punishment in the steward hall. Especially, he even dared to lay his hands on a weak girl?
Zwollen was dumbfounded.
He was just punishing a disciple. How did he attract these old fellows? Could it be that Huli went to invite them? Furthermore, the weak girl that Elder Ling Hai spoke of, was she really Yin Luofeng? If this woman was a weak woman, then there wouldn't be any evil women in this world. Thinking of this, Zwollen took a deep breath. He suppressed the panic in his heart and explained, "Elders, listen to me. What Huli said is only his side of the story. Don't believe him. This woman dared to commit murder in public. She has committed a heinous crime and should be punished with death. Therefore, I am only punishing her according to the rules of the Academy. Elders, you will definitely investigate this matter and decide who is right and who is wrong. You won't be blinded by some treacherous people." The treacherous people that he spoke of were people like Yun Luofeng. Chapter 1251. Ling Hai laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with anger. "Zwollen, you still dare to shirk responsibility at a time like this?" He gritted his teeth and glared at Zwollen. "You should quit your job as the hall master of the steward hall. Pack up the shop and get lost." Zwollen's mind was blown. He didn't understand why Ling Hai wanted him to get lost. Just because he took care of Yun Luofeng? Elder Ling Hai, Zwollen wanted to continue defending himself, but he saw that the elders were already walking towards Yun Luofeng. "My precious disciple, are you hurt? Don't worry, I will definitely get revenge for you." When Ling Hai said this, he turned around and glared at Zwollen. Rumble. Zwollen felt as if his brain had been struck by lightning. His face was full of shock. Yun Luofeng was Ling Hai's disciple. Was this a joke? How could this be? But what shocked Zwollen even more was that Ling Hai's concern for him made the other elders look at Yun Luofeng nervously. "Feng, did Zwollen hurt you? If he hurt you, the 5 of us will definitely not let him leave. You are our disciple, but you were bullied when we weren't paying attention, and you were even brought to the penal hall. If we don't get revenge for you, if word gets out, where will the 5 of us put our faces?" The more the 5 elders spoke, the angrier they became. All of their sharp gazes shot towards Zwollen. Zwollen was completely dumbfounded. He originally thought that Yun Luofeng was at most Ling Hai's disciple, but according to the current situation, the 5 elders were all his masters? Oh my god, he had offended all the elders of the East Courtyard. Wang Yizhi took 2 steps back, his face extremely pale. He turned around and wanted to escape, but at this moment, a nightmarish voice made his body freeze. "Where do you think you're going?" Su Kong was expressionless as he looked coldly at Wang Yizhi. Wang Yizhi wiped the sweat off his forehead and smiled awkwardly at Su Kong. "Elder Su Kong, this matter has nothing to do with me. It was all my nephew's fault. Please let me go this time. If I knew that Yun Luofeng was your disciple, I wouldn't dare to do it even if I had 100 guts." "Let you go?" Void sneered. "You made such a big mistake. Why should I let you go? From tomorrow onwards, I'll let Steward Jean take over the steward's hall. Your crimes will be judged by him." Thump. Wang Yizhi's legs went soft, and he fell heavily to the ground. He knew that he had no way out this time. "Elder Void," Zwollen gritted his teeth. "You want to remove me from my position. Do the elders of the West Courtyard agree?" Void looked at him coldly. "Can't you just hand over your resignation?" "Why is Elder Su Kong so sure that I will hand in my resignation letter?" Zwollen clenched his fists tightly. If he left the academy, he would not have a better future. Therefore, he would definitely not be willing to hand in his resignation letter. Void raised his eyebrows. "Hand in your resignation letter yourself. Or, from tomorrow onwards, the world will know that you died of a heart attack. 2 paths. Choose for yourself." Zwollen's body swayed a few times and finally fell to the ground. His face was extremely pale, and his eyes were filled with despair as he stared deeply at the elders in front of him. Ling Hai rubbed his nose. For the first time, he realized that Void was so black-bellied if Zwollen wanted to live, he could only hand in his resignation letter. Otherwise, he wouldn't mind killing him. Chapter 1252. Tomorrow, I will hand in my resignation. After saying these words, Zwollen felt all the strength in his body disappear, and he lay on the ground weakly. Why didn't you do this earlier? Shui Ying's beautiful eyes swept past Zwollen's body and landed on Yun Luofeng. She smiled and said, "Yun girl, we will take care of this matter. You have also suffered a lot of shock. Go back and have a good rest." Yun Luofeng nodded. She took one last look at the elders, turned around, and walked out. To be honest, the reason why Yun Luofeng came to the penal hall was because she had the ability to protect herself. However, the appearance of the elders still touched her heart. Huli stood at the door. He had arrived late, but he had seen everything that had just happened. Hence, when he saw Yun Luofeng walking towards his door, he laughed involuntarily. "Yun Luofeng, I didn't think that you would be the disciple of the Academy's elders. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant." Yun Luofeng stopped in her tracks. "Even without the masters, no one can stop me from killing someone if I want to. Isn't the purpose of a person's life to seek revenge?" How could she suppress herself? Huli smiled. "I realize that I am becoming more and more interested in you. Perhaps I won't be too bored following you for the next 10 years. In the beginning, Huli felt sad that he had sold himself for 10 years. But now, he realized that if he stayed by Yun Luofeng's side, his days in the future would be very exciting. At this moment, the elders of the West Courtyard were investigating the murderer because of Yao Mingqi's incident. When they came back to their senses, the steward's hall had already changed owners. They wanted to settle the score later, but everything was already a foregone conclusion. They could only swallow their anger. Zwollen of the steward's hall was personally trained by Yao Shu. Now that he was chased out of the academy and Steward Jean was promoted, how could he not be angry? Hence, his hatred towards the East Courtyard grew stronger and stronger. Before returning home, Yun Luofeng purposely changed her clothes and healed the injuries on her body. Even so, when Yun Xiao saw her for the first time, his breathing suddenly tightened. "You're injured?" Yun Luofeng was startled. She had already healed most of her injuries, but the man before her eyes could still see through her. "I just fought with someone. It's nothing serious." Yun Luofeng raised the corners of her lips and slowly walked towards Yun Xiao. She reached out and gently wrapped her arms around the man in front of her, burying her head in his chest. "Yun Xiao, let's have a baby. Children?" Those two words caused the light in Yun Xiao's eyes to gradually soften. He raised his hands and hugged the young girl tightly. After a while, he finally reacted and furrowed his brows. "Don't change the subject. Tell me, who hurt you?" Murderous intent surged from his body, and a cold aura arose spontaneously. Yun Luofeng believed that if he said Huli's name, he would definitely rush to the Western Continent Academy and tear that fox-like man into pieces. "I'm fine now. Don't worry. I didn't lose this battle." Yun Zhao's eyes stared intently at Yun Luofeng. "I know that you want to rely on your own strength to fight, but when the time is right, you can rely on me. My power exists to protect you. I do not wish for you to suffer any injuries."
"All right."
Yun Luofeng lifted her head and kissed the man's lips. Suddenly, she seemed to have discovered something and slightly narrowed her eyes. "Did someone come today?" Chapter 1253. Yun Luofeng has always been very sensitive to smells. Hence, the faintly discernible fragrance wafting out from the courtyard caused a cold glint to flash across Yun Luofeng's eyes. Yun Xiao nodded honestly. "A woman sneaked into our house and secretly ate the pastries I made. However, I've already made her spit them out and crippled her." Perhaps she was afraid that Yun Luofeng would be angry, Yun Xiao hurriedly explained. "I didn't let her dirty our territory. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile as he narrowed his eyes. Looks like I can't leave your side in the future. Otherwise, who knows how many women will want to seduce you? They can't. In this world, the only person who can get close to him is Yun Luofeng. Yun Zhao's eyes darkened, and a light flashed across his grim eyes. However, no one knew what he was thinking the next day. After Yun Luofeng had breakfast, she headed to the academy. Yun Xiao stood at the doorway as he watched her leave, his deep and serene eyes unable to see the bottom. Yun Xiao, are you thinking of going to the academy to find master? Little Mo had unknowingly walked up from behind him. Her large, bright eyes blinked slightly as she looked at Yun Xiao curiously. Yun Zhao's gaze became even colder. I'm worried about her. Little Mo blinked. It's already past the registration period. You can't go to the academy even if you want to. As if she had not heard Little Mo's words, Yun Xiao strode out. After a long while, a grim voice rang in Little Mo's ears. Follow me. Little Mo curled her lips and hurriedly chased after Yun Xiao, disappearing under the bright sunlight. As Yun Luofeng had defeated Hu Li of the Heaven Roll, he had successfully entered the Heaven Roll. As a disciple of the Heaven Roll, he did not need to attend classes and only needed to stay in the cultivation room to cultivate every day. At this moment, Yun Luofeng had just sat down in his room and had not even had time to cultivate when a clamor sounded from outside the door. What's going on? She stood up from the mat and walked towards the door. The moment she opened the door, she saw a fair-skinned and handsome young man standing in front of her door. As soon as he saw her, he got straight to the point and said, Yun Luofeng, I saw your battle with Hu Li yesterday, so I came to look for you. You also want to challenge me? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and looked at the youth's handsome face. The young man blushed. No, I'm not here to challenge you. I'm here to confess to you. Farewell? Yun Luofeng was stunned for a moment. His brows furrowed slightly. I'm not interested. After saying that, she was about to close the door. Wait. The young man hurried forward and extended his hand to stop Yun Luofeng from closing the door. His face was filled with sincerity. After watching your battle yesterday, I realized that you're the most domineering woman I've ever seen. Especially the scene of you dealing with Wang Mujing, it made me very excited. Yun Luofeng, you can give me a chance. Do you want to scram yourself, or do you want me to help you? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows, his domineering eyes sweeping over the young man's blushing face. The young man wanted to continue speaking, but at this moment, an enchanting voice rang out from behind him. You Zizha, you already have a fiancé, and you still want to pester Yun Luofeng? Hu Li waved his fan and walked over with a face full of smiles. He slowly walked to Yun Luofeng's side and winked at her. Even if Yun Luofeng accepts me, he'll never accept you. Chapter 1254. Yu Zizha's expression was a little awkward. My fiancé has nothing to do with me. It was decided by my parents, but I have the right to pursue my true love. You know him? Yun Luofeng ignored Yu Zizha and turned to look at Hu Li, the person ranked first on the Earth list. Hu Li said in a low voice. He's only half a step away from becoming a holy king. As for his fiancée, he paused, then continued, she's ranked second on the Earth list. Although both of them are on the Earth list, their families are very powerful in the Western continent. Oh. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and turned to enter the room. You know him. You deal with him for me. Hu Li's mouth twitched. As a little follower, he had to deal with his master's suitor? Cough, cough. Hu Li coughed dryly. Yu Zizha, you should go back. Don't bother her. Don't forget, you already have a fiancé. Yu Zizha looked at Yun Luofeng, who had entered the room, and sighed softly. He turned around and left with a helpless expression. But this would not make him give up. No matter what, he would move Yun Luofeng. Early in the morning, because of Yu Zizha's actions, Yun Luofeng was once again embroiled in rumors. The entire academy was saying that she had taken a fancy to Yu Zizha's family. That was why she had seduced Yuzija and snatched his fiancé away. A woman like this, no matter how talented she was still disdainful. At this moment, Yun Luofeng's cultivation room was surrounded by a group of women. The leader of those people was a beautiful woman. At this moment, she had her hands on her hips and was glaring angrily. Yun Luofeng, don't think that you're great just because you entered the heaven list. Wasn't that because Huli let you go? But it's not enough that you seduced Huli. You even dared to seduce my fiancé. Get out here, immediately. That's right. In her eyes, the person who had lost that battle might not have been Huli. If Huli had not let her go, she might have been beaten to the ground. Scram. The door to the room was blown open by a gust of wind, and a force shot out from within. Even though he quickly used his sleeves to block it, he was still pushed back a few steps by this force. The anger in her chest became even more intense. Yun Luofeng, isn't it enough that you have Huli? Why don't you let my fiancé go as well? I know, Huli's family can't compare to my fiancé's, so you want to capture these two men in your hands. How can there be such a cheap woman like you in this world?
Bang!
The door was open once again, and a girl in snow-white clothes strode out. For some reason, the moment the woman saw the white-robed girl, she felt her breathing tighten, as if a rock was pressing down on her body. Yuzija's fiancé? The young girl lifted her chin slightly, looking down at the group of people in front of her. Her eyes were filled with arrogance, and her deep black eyes were filled with dominance. Go back and tell Yuzija not to bother me. People like him.
I don't like them.
The woman's expression changed drastically. If she said that she didn't like her fiancé, wouldn't that be insulting her? Yun Luofeng, who do you think you are? Is the heaven list that amazing? Let me tell you, as long as I want to enter the heaven list, I can beat you down at any time. You actually dare to look down on my fiancé. Chapter 1255. Senior sister, Zhui Yun is right. Senior brother Yu is already outstanding enough. How dare you look down on him? He's the only one who looks down on you. You have no right to be picky. Is it reasonable for you to seduce someone else's fiancé? The group of women behind Zhui Yun spoke up one after another. They all glared angrily at Yun Luofeng. Clearly, in their eyes, Yun Luofeng was an unforgivable evil.
Zhui Yun.
Yuzija, who had rushed over after hearing the news, saw Zhui Yun standing in front of Yun Luofeng. His expression changed drastically. He hurried forward and said angrily, "What are you doing here? This has nothing to do with Miss Yun. I'm the one who has taken a fancy to her." Zhui Yun's eyes reddened when she saw Yuzija's protection of Yun Luofeng. She felt so wronged that tears were about to fall. What's so good about this woman? Why are you protecting her? Shut up. Yuzija raised his hand and slapped Zhui Yun harshly. Zhui Yun was stunned by this slap. She raised her head in disbelief and stared at Yuzija, as if she hadn't expected that he would ruthlessly slap her because of Yun Luofeng. "You hit me?" Zhui Yun touched her flushed face as tears fell from her eyes. Yuzija did not look at Zhui Yun. He turned to look at Yun Luofeng. "Miss Yun, this is my fault. I apologize to you. I never thought that Zhui Yun would cause trouble for you. Believe me, this will not happen again." Yun Luofeng's lips curled. A dangerous arc flashed across her narrowed eyes. "Next time? Do you think there will be a next time?" Yun Luofeng looked at Yuzija and asked, "Yuzija, I don't believe that you will fall in love with me because of my battle with Huli. Tell me, what is your motives?" Yuzija's expression froze. A trace of panic surfaced in his eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. He smiled and said, "Miss Yun, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand? I do have feelings for Miss Yun. I have no other intentions. Furthermore, it's understandable that you won't accept me. However, I have confidence in myself." Mother. Just as Yuzija was about to continue expressing his feelings, a soft voice came from behind him. When Yun Luofeng heard this voice, her body suddenly stiffened. She raised her head, and when her dark eyes saw the two people, one big and one small, slowly walking over, the coldness on her face gradually dissipated. The man's black robe fluttered in the wind. He was cold and murderous, and his handsome face was expressionless, as if he had facial paralysis. Just by standing in front of this man, one would be instantly crushed by his powerful aura. However, everyone's gaze slowly landed on the little boy beside the man, who looked like he was carved out of jade. The little boy looked to be about 5 or 6 years old. He was exceptionally cute, and his big, bright eyes were like stars, shining with a dazzling light. When he saw Yun Luofeng, a brilliant smile broke out on his face. He opened his arms wide and rushed into Yun Luofeng's embrace. This time, Yun Xiao did not stop him. His gaze was fixated on the young girl's peerlessly beautiful face from beginning to end as his figure was reflected in his black pupil's mother. This little boy was addressing Yun Luofeng as mother. Mother, you left father and me at home. Father and I are very lonely, so we came to find you. Xiaomo's eyes flickered a few times. She looked at the stiff-faced Yuzija with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Who is this fellow? Is he another fly that has been circling around you? Chapter 1256. Aside from Yun Xiao, all the other men around Yun Luofeng were like flies to little Mo. Why are you here? Yun Luofeng held little Mo in his arms as he looked at Yun Xiao. His lips curled into a smile. Little Mo wanted to follow you, so I brought him here. Little Mo rolled his eyes in his heart when he heard Yun Xiao's words. Yun Xiao was obviously the one who wanted to find Yun Luofeng, yet she had pushed him out. However, little Mo did not expose Yun Luofeng. He smiled and said, I miss my mother, so I asked my father to bring me to find you. Over the past few years, little Mo had been calling her mother more and more smoothly. He had even used this method to chase away many of Yun Luofeng's pursuers. After all, no matter how outstanding those people were, they could not compare to Yun Xiao. Cough, cough. Yuzija coughed dryly and said awkwardly, Miss Yun, so you thought you were married? Yun Luofeng raised his brows and swept his cold gaze towards Yuzija. I don't care what your motives are. If you plan to hurt me or the people around me, I will not let you off. From the moment Yuzija had appeared, she knew that this man was not simply pursuing her. There was a secret in his heart that could not be divulged. Yuzija's expression became even more awkward. He did not say another word and hurriedly left. Yuzija. Zhuo Yun stomped her foot and was about to chase after him when a cold voice suddenly rang out from behind her. Who allowed you to leave? Zhuo Yun's body stiffened. She turned around and gritted her teeth. This is the West Continent College. What do you want? You humiliated him with your words, so there's no need for you to keep your tongue.
Ah!
Zhuo Yun had just screamed when a force entered her mouth. She felt a sharp pain on her tongue and blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Get lost. The man waved his sleeves in a cold and domineering manner. The moment he waved his sleeves, a shockwave spread out and sent those who were blocking Yun Luofeng's path flying. Yun Luofeng. Huli walked over from behind the crowd. Just as he was about to raise his hand to pat Yun Luofeng's shoulder, he came into contact with the man's cold and stern eyes. He was so frightened that he quickly withdrew his hand. I didn't expect that you're already married. Fortunately, I found out early. Otherwise, what if I fall in love with you after getting to know you better?
Haha.
Yun Luofeng knew that Huli was joking, so he did not take it to heart. On the contrary, Yun Zhao's cold eyes swept over him, and his grim black eyes were mixed with a warning. You won't have the chance to interact with her. Huli chuckled. That's not necessarily true. I'm going to follow her for 10 years. In these 10 years, I'm going to get to know her better.
10 years?
Yun Xiao frowned, and his gaze fell on Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng shrugged. He was the one who fought with me before. He lost to me, so he has to serve me for 10 years. Oh. Yun Zhao's eyes filled with killing intent once again turned towards Hu Li. The person who injured you is him? Hu Li's heart trembled when he came into contact with the man's gaze. A hint of astonishment flashed across his cunning fox eyes. If it weren't for the fact that you're going to serve foam, for 10 years, I wouldn't have let you off so easily just because you've injured her. After throwing these words, Yun Zhao retracted his aura and spoke in a grim voice. Once he had retracted his aura, Hu Li felt his entire body relax. Unknowingly, his back was already drenched in sweat. At this moment, in a corner not too far away, a woman saw the grim man standing next to Yun Luofeng, and a sense of shock flashed across her eyes. Chapter 1257. Isn't it the father and son that Senior Mingqi met before? That day, they had followed Yao Mingqi back and witnessed the fight between Yao Mingqi and the father and son. Yao Mingqi concluded that this man must have been abandoned by his wife, which was why he was so angry and even abused his child. Unfortunately, the man's strength was too terrifying, so much so that Yao Mingqi did not dare to fight back. No, I must tell Senior Mingqi about this. The girl gritted her teeth and quickly ran in another direction. The room was exquisite and luxurious, the pink curtains fluttering in the wind. Yao Mingqi lay on the bed in a daze, her gaze fixed on the roof beam. A line of tears flowed from the corner of her eyes, emitting a sparkling luster. Senior Mingqi. Suddenly, an anxious voice came from outside the room, but it did not cause any change in Yao Mingqi's mood. Her eyes were still dull and gloomy. Senior Mingqi, guess who I just saw? The woman quickly ran in and said while gasping for breath, Do you still remember that day when we came back and found a child crying in a house? You want to check it out? Yao Mingqi's gaze finally moved from the roof beam to the girl's face. Just now, I saw that father and son. The girl wiped the sweat from her forehead. Our academy's Yun Luofeng is that man's wife. Yun Luofeng? His wife. Yao Mingqi's hand on the bed sheet clenched tightly. Her heart felt like it was being torn apart. She could not help but gasp in pain. Wasn't he abandoned by his wife? Then why was his wife in the academy? Had she misunderstood all this time? Senior Mingqi. The girl carefully looked at the pale Yao Mingqi, not understanding what had happened. Yao Mingqi lowered her eyes and said the only thing she had said since she was crippled. I want to see Master. The girl was overjoyed. Okay, I'll go inform Elder Yao Shu now. She had finally made Senior Mingqi speak. If Elder Yao Shu knew, he would definitely reward her. Thinking of this, the girl quickly turned and left. She wanted to go to the west courtyard to inform Elder Yao Shu. Sure enough, knowing that his own disciple wanted to see him, Elder Yao Shu quickly ran over. His face was filled with heartache as he walked in front of Yao Mingqi. Mingqi, don't worry. I will find a doctor to treat you. Yao Mingqi clenched her fists tightly. Dad, other than them, there was no one else here, so Yao Mingqi called him father. Her tears instantly flowed like a river, and a look of grievance appeared on her face. Mingqi. Yao Shu's heart ached. Tell me who hurt you. Was it those old bastards from the void? Yao Mingqi shook her head. The one who injured me was Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng? Yao Shu was taken aback. Only then did he remember the storm that had been brewing within the academy recently. He asked hesitantly, You mean our academy's Yun Luofeng? It's her. Yao Mingqi's tears flowed down again. Previously, I saw her abusing her son. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I wanted to meddle in other people's business. Who knew that I would be chased away after being scolded by her? And yesterday, because I was worried, I wanted to enter her house to see if she was abusing her son again. Who knew that just as I entered, I would bump into her? Mingqi, your strength isn't bad. Why were you crippled by her? Yao Shu frowned and asked. Chapter 1258. Yao Mingqi's pale face was filled with pain. Father, her son has been educated by her to become an ingrate. I risked my life to help her, but he used that innocent and pure appearance to confuse me. That's why I fell into Yun Luofeng's hands. Not only did she cripple me, she even framed me for stealing. I really didn't do anything. Her voice was hoarse, and her face was wet with tears. However, this is not her obedient child. If that boy doesn't listen to her orders, she will definitely abuse him again. What? Yao Shu was furious and slammed the table. The veins on his face bulged. Yun Luofeng, that woman is so cruel. Not only did she abuse a child, she also hurt my daughter. Mingqi, don't worry, I will definitely avenge you. Father, I don't want her to die too early. I want her to feel the same pain that I did. Yao Mingqi lowered her eyes and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across her face. Her voice was hoarse. I'm going to find Yun Luofeng now. Yao Shu's eyes darkened. He didn't even have time to comfort his daughter before he quickly rushed out. Under the azure sky, the crowd had already dispersed. Yun Luofeng was just about to bring Yun Xiao into his room when an anxious voice called out from behind. Miss Yun, and Zeheo stumbled over. His footsteps were anxious, and his voice sounded like he was about to cry. My young mistress is missing. Arale is missing? Xiaomo's reaction was even more intense than Yun Luofeng's. Quick, let's go find her. Yun Luofeng glanced at Xiao Mo and then at Zeheo. Tell me what happened. And Zeheo's expression changed. Just now. Miss wanted to go out to play, so I brought her. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, Miss would disappear? If I'm not wrong, the people there must have found Miss and kidnapped her. Miss Yun, please save my Mississippi. As long as you save her, I will do anything to repay you. After saying this, Zeheo knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. His head quickly turned purple, and blood flowed down his forehead. Yun Luofeng was his last hope. He could only hold on to him tightly. In this place, besides Yun Luofeng, no one else could help him. Let's go first. Tell me more about the situation on the way. And Zeheo lifted his head and looked at Yun Luofeng in disbelief. According to his understanding of Yun Luofeng, this young girl had always stayed out of everything. Her willingness to help was simply beyond his expectations. After Yun Luofeng and the rest left, Yao Shu rushed to her cultivation room. However, she was told that Yun Luofeng and the rest had already left the academy. Instantly, he flew into a rage and issued an order to chase after Yun Luofeng even if he was 1,000 miles away. Miss Yun, my family's young miss was adopted by the patriarch and madam, but the patriarch and madam passed away very quickly. Now, the ones in charge of the Ji family are her uncle and aunt. Her aunt is what we often call a bad woman. That bad woman seized all of the Ji family's assets, and even the dowry that Madam brought to the Ji family fell into her hands. Along the way, Zeheo explained the situation to Yun Luofeng. His expression was anxious, and his eyes were full of worry. That bad woman saw that Miss was cute and wanted to sell Miss to someone as a concubine. But my Miss is only 6 years old. To make her a concubine, isn't that forcing her to her death? So I ran away with the young Miss. In the end, that bad woman was so angry that she sent assassins to kill us. Chapter 1259. Since she has given up on making Ji Fei a concubine and wants to kill her instead, why is she still trying to capture her? Yun Luofeng glanced at Zeheo and asked. And Zeheo shook his head. I'm not sure either. She's angry that Miss didn't listen to her, and she thinks that even if Miss marries over, it will still cause trouble for her. She plans to go all out and kill Miss. I don't understand why she wants to capture Miss. Are you sure that it was the Ji family who captured her and not Ji Fei who got lost? Yun Luofeng continued to ask. And Zeheo shook his head with certainty. It's the Ji family. It must be someone from the Ji family. After I lost the young miss, I asked around. They saw the young miss being carried away by someone cute. In addition, I picked up a G family token on the road. From this, I concluded that it must be someone from the G family. On this mainland, everyone was in danger. No one would meddle in other people's business. Even if they saw a little girl being kidnapped in public, no one would stand up and say anything. Otherwise, if they angered those people, they would definitely suffer. And Zaheo's expression became more and more anxious. He could imagine how terrified Miss must have been when she'd been taken away. It's all my fault. And Zaheo slapped his head fiercely. I didn't look after Miss well. Otherwise, Miss wouldn't have been taken away. There's no point in saying so much. The most important thing now is to find Ji Fei. Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened as a cold light flashed across them. And Zaheo pursed his lips and said, Miss Yun, I came to find you with the intention of trying my luck. I had originally thought that you would reject me like before, so why did you choose to help us this time? Yun Luofeng stopped in her tracks. She turned her back to Zaheo and looked at the sky in front of her. Yesterday, when I stood next to Hu Li, I was buried under the rubble. But I heard everything that happened in the arena. And Zaheo was stunned and looked at Yun Luofeng in surprise. Back then, he had thought that Yun Luofeng had died in the arena, and he had already sunk into grief. But now, he had heard Wang Mujing's smug laughter. New hatred and old hatred had caused him to momentarily lose all reason, and he had gone to find Wang Mujing and fight him to the death. Was that why she was willing to help them? And Zaheo's actions were not very big, but don't forget, he was no match for Wang Mujing. If it weren't for the fact that Yun Luofeng was still alive, and Zaheo would definitely have died under the attacks of Wang Mujing and the others for a moment, and Zaheo had mixed feelings. He also understood how foolish his actions of pestering Yun Luofeng in the past were. This woman would never take pity on them just because of their begging. It was very easy to get her help. As long as they treated her sincerely, she would repay them 100-fold. Thank you, and Zaheo thanked sincerely. You don't have to thank me now. You can thank me after I rescued Ji Fei. After Yun Luofeng finished speaking, his figure flashed, and he quickly appeared 100 meters away. And Zaheo suppressed the gratitude in his heart and hurriedly chased after her. Ji family. In the courtyard of Gaoding, a beautiful woman was sitting in a pavilion, elegantly sipping tea. At this moment, a guard walked in from outside the courtyard. He was carrying a sack on his shoulder. Inside the sack, there was a constant whimpering sound. Chapter 1260. Thud. The guard threw the sack on the ground and joined his fists. Madam, I've brought her back. Very good. The beautiful woman slowly turned around and walked to the side of the sack. She lifted her foot and kicked the man who was struggling inside the sack. Her lips curled into a sinister smile. Why don't you keep running? Why don't you keep running? Men, untie this sack. This lady wants to have a good look at this little slut. Just as she spoke, a guard immediately stepped forward and took the sack. A little head poked out from the sack. Her large, bright eyes were filled with stubbornness as she stared fixedly at the people in front of her. Little slut, you dare to glare at me? The beautiful woman laughed icily and lifted the little Lolita from the ground. Her lips curled into a disdainful smile. I've said this before. Even if you want to run away, no matter how far you run, I will still be able to hunt you down. I've already given up on you, you little slut. I never thought that someone would be willing to pay a high price to buy you. You've been freeloading in the Ji family for so many years. It's time for you to earn something for me. She had originally intended to sell Ji Fei to an old man, but who would have thought that Ji Fei would fight back with all her might and even escape with Zaheo's help. As for her, how could she let the master know what she had done? Hence, she had informed the master that Ji Fei had eloped with the guard. Ji Fei was only 6 years old. How could the master believe her words? She had sent men to look for Ji Fei, but how could she allow them to find her? Hence, she had sent assassins. If someone had not come to the Ji family and offered to buy Ji Fei, she would not have given up on killing her. Sob, sob. Ji Fei's mouth was covered with a piece of cloth, and she could only whimper. She glared fiercely at the beautiful woman, unwilling to be outdone. You still dare to glare at me? The madam's eyes turned cold as she lifted Ji Fei's clothes and said, Ji Fei, I'm warning you. If the master asks, you will tell him that you've eloped with Nzaheo. If you dare to say a word, Nzaheo's life will be forfeit because of your mistake. The little Lolita's body stiffened, and she clenched her fists tightly. Her eyes were filled with flames of anger. The beautiful woman had grasped her weak point. Brother Nzaheo was the only family she had left in this world. She would not allow anyone to hurt him. Men, untie her so that the clan leader doesn't discover anything. The beautiful woman coldly snorted and ordered expressionlessly. 2 guards stepped forward and cut the ropes on the little Loli's body. Then, they removed the cloth from her mouth. The little Loli was finally able to breathe, and the first thing she said was to curse. Who is freeloading in your Ji family? My parents are the former patriarch and madam of the Ji family. They left me a lot of money. You guys took that money and still dare to say that I am a freeloader. The real freeloaders are you guys. The little Loli bit her lips tightly. This Ji family was single-handedly founded by her parents. On the contrary, her uncle and auntie relied on her parents to live. If it weren't for her parents, they would definitely be living precarious lives. However, in the end, they occupied his parents' property and still dared to insult him as a freeloader. Your parents? The beautiful woman sneered. Even though your surname is Ji, do you have the blood of the Ji family in your body? You're just a daughter that your parents picked up. Since they can't get pregnant, logically speaking, the Ji family should be managed by their biological brother. Could it be that the Ji family should be given to an outsider like you instead of his biological brother? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.